mysterious figure with wolf-like features keeps a silent vigil over the sprawling city from the edge of a skyscraper. He bears a set of razor-sharp fangs, signaling that his long hunt has finally come to an end. Elsewhere, a silver-haired man struggles to stay upright in a packed subway car as a sudden fever takes hold. He clings to the handrail for dear life, his vision blurring as the heat in his body becomes unbearable. Despite the heavy medical mask, he can barely suppress the heavy gasps escaping his lips. The passengers nearby begin to whisper, unsettled by the strangely sweet aroma drifting from the struggling man. Two strangers corner him, their intrusive questions only adding to his rising panic. He stumbles out of the train into the crowded station, desperate to escape the suffocating press of the crowd. Leaning against a cold wall for support, he realizes his only hope is to find a shortcut home before he collapses completely. His path is suddenly blocked by a pair of loiterers who clearly have no intention of letting him pass. He lowers his mask, revealing a face pale with exhaustion and eyes clouded by his worsening condition. Sensing his weakness, the thugs stand up to intimidate the lone traveler. One of them reaches out with a predatory hand, aiming to seize the vulnerable man. The silver-haired man glares back, refusing to let his physical state break his resolve. Out of the shadows, a massive black beast leaps through the air with terrifying speed. The wolf slams into the lead attacker, pinning him to the wooden walkway with ease. Its glowing blue eye narrows with a primal fury that freezes the thugs in their tracks. The creature stands firmly between the man and his attackers, its presence radiating raw power. It lets out a low, guttural snarl that echoes through the narrow passage. Terrified by the apex predator, the remaining thug cowers against the railing in total shock. The silver-haired man reaches out, his hand trembling as he tries to process the sudden rescue. Realizing they are outmatched by the beast, the thugs scramble to their feet and flee into the night. With the threat gone, the man's remaining strength evaporates, and he begins to fall forward. He locks eyes with the wolf for one final moment before the world fades to black. A sharp, swift strike ensures the area is secured and the danger is fully neutralized. The wolf carefully nudges the unconscious man, its predatory instincts replaced by a protective drive. When the man stirs, he finds himself being carried by a muscular stranger who seems strangely familiar. He looks up at his savior, searching for an explanation for this miraculous rescue. The stranger maintains a steady, intense gaze, ensuring his charge remains stable during the transit. Feeling a sudden wave of relief, the man allows his eyes to drift shut, trusting the stranger's care. The stranger holds him close, providing the vital physical support needed to stabilize his fluctuating condition. A faint blush creeps across the man's face as he realizes his physical distress is finally subsiding. The rescuer flashes a confident grin, revealing the same sharp fangs seen earlier on the rooftop. Above them, the full moon shines brightly over the city, marking the end of a chaotic night. Back in the safety of a room, the black wolf remains by the man's side, watching over his sleep. The man rests peacefully, his breathing even as he recovers from the night's ordeal. Reverting to human form, the hybrid smiles down at his companion, fully committed to his role as protector. He drifts in the depths of unconsciousness, his eyes still heavy with sleep. Suddenly, the silver-haired man snaps his eyes open as the haze of the fever begins to lift. He is met with a warm, welcoming smile from his mysterious savior. But the memory shifts into a dark, distorted nightmare of what he thinks he saw during the rescue. He envisions the hybrid standing over him, covered in the remnants of a brutal battle. Bolting upright in bed, he gasps for air, terrified of the man standing before him. He screams out a desperate warning, refusing to let anyone hurt him again. Acting on pure instinct, he reaches for the heavy lamp on the bedside table. He swings the makeshift weapon with all his might, catching the hybrid completely off guard. As a drop of blood trickles down the hybrid's neck, the man realizes this is no dream. The hybrid stares back at him, his wolf ears twitching in confusion and hurt. Even in a smaller, less threatening form, the protector is stunned by the sudden hostility. The man scrambles to the corner of the room, demanding to know how this stranger broke in. He frantically dials emergency services, threatening to call the police if the intruder doesn't leave. The hybrid looks on with wide eyes, hurt that his rescue has been so misinterpreted. A sudden swirl of golden energy begins to envelop the room as the hybrid prepares to change. In a flash of light, the man transforms into a majestic, dark-furred wolf. His piercing blue eyes remain fixed on the human he's sworn to protect. The transformation completes, leaving a powerful beast standing where a man once was. The silver-haired man stares in absolute disbelief, realizing he is facing a true beastman. A childhood memory flashes through his mind of a small, loyal pup he once held dear. The wolf stands firmly on the bed, explaining their deep, unbreakable connection. Overwhelmed by the revelation, the man clutches his head as the weight of his condition returns. He blames the beastman for the strange, uncontrollable changes his body is going through. He lashes out in frustration, declaring that he has had enough of this supernatural chaos. The wolf stares back, his expression turning solemn as he accepts his rejection. Pointing a trembling finger at the window, the man orders his protector to vanish forever. The wolf obediently gathers his things, looking back one last time with a heavy heart. Alone at last, the silver-haired man gazes out the window, his expression full of regret. Outside, the wolf can no longer hold back his sorrow, tears streaming down his fur. With a final, mournful look, The beast leaps out of the window and into the night. The man watches him go, his violet eyes reflecting a deep, hidden sadness. He wonders if things might have been different if they had met a decade ago. But the respite is short-lived as the intense fever suddenly flares up again. He reaches for his medicine, realizing his body is becoming immune to the treatment. Weakened and trembling, he slides down the wall, his strength failing him once more. He tugs at his tie, desperate for air as the internal heat becomes unbearable. Collapsing onto the bed, he struggles to manage the sudden onset of his symptoms. He checks his phone with blurred vision, trying to alert his colleagues that he won't be coming in. He sends a final, urgent message to Ling Jian, warning him of his deteriorating state. Exhausted, he curls into a ball, hoping the darkness will finally bring him peace. Meanwhile, the lone wolf wanders into the forest, feeling the sting of the man's hatred. He pauses in the rain, looking back at the apartment where his companion suffers alone. He clutches the man's old clothes, mourning the years they spent apart. Curling up in the grass, he vows to stay close and guard the building from the shadows. Little does he know, a group of thugs is already closing in, searching for the man's room. Thousands of years ago, a genetic mutation birthed the very first beastman, a creature born with the primal instincts of the wild. This mutation spread like a virus through the ages, creating a hidden society of outcasts who could shift into animal forms at will. Once a beastman marks their chosen partner, a mystical red thread binds their souls together in a contract that cannot be easily severed. This bond is absolute and eternal, remaining unbroken until the moment death finally claims one of the pair. In the modern world, humans view these powerful beings with prejudice, dismissing them as nothing more than primitive urban legends. But for those who have actually been marked by a beastman, the connection feels like an inescapable nightmare they can never wake from. Waking up in a cold sweat, the man checks his phone as the terrifying memory of a wolf's presence lingers in his mind. He sits up in a panic, wondering if a dangerous alpha wolf is truly stalking the halls of his private apartment complex. His friend Ling Jian calls to check on his well-being, reminding him that large animals are strictly prohibited in the building. Trying to keep his voice steady, he assures his friend that he's all right, despite the lingering sense of dread. Peering out his window, he's horrified to see a group of thugs trying to lure the wolf into a lethal trap with poison. He realizes with a scowl that the aggressive intruders from the previous night have returned to finish their job. Suddenly, the protector's true nature emerges as he bares his fangs with glowing, predatory eyes. The giant wolf lets out a fearsome roar, sending the panicked cowards scurrying away in total terror. He pinches one of the fleeing thugs by the collar, proving that no one gets past his watchful eye. After ensuring the threat is neutralized, the wolf drops the intruder, who quickly scrambles away to safety. Looking back at the balcony, the massive beast softens his gaze, looking up at the man with surprising innocence. A realization hits the man: the wolf wasn't a threat, but a guardian waiting outside to keep him safe from harm. Deciding to show some gratitude, he places a steaming cup of instant noodles in front of his furry protector. The wolf carefully blows on the hot steam, looking adorable as he prepares for his first meal in ages. He takes a curious sniff, the savory aroma finally winning him over. Abandoning his dignity, the wolf tips the cup back to devour every last drop of the human food. He sits back with a satisfied silhouette, his hunger finally quelled for the night. Watching him eat, the man notes that this creature looks nothing like the cold-blooded killer from his recurring dreams. He stares into his empty fridge, questioning if his visions are actually warnings of a future yet to come. Closing the door, he decides that leaving his protector out in the elements is simply too dangerous for both of them. He asks the wolf why he won't return to human form, worried about the technical consequences of being caught with a wild animal. The wolf pauses in realization, suddenly aware that he is currently lacking any proper human attire. He leaps onto the furniture, frantically searching through the man's discarded laundry for a solution. With a determined wag of his tail, he digs through the pile to find something suitable for his transformation. He proudly presents a pair of pants to the man, signaling that he is ready to make the transition back. A magical glow surrounds the wolf as he initiates the difficult process of shifting his physical form. In an instant, the protector returns to his human self, surprising the man with his sudden and close proximity. He flashes a confident, toothy grin, clearly pleased to be back in his own skin at last. But the moment of peace is short-lived as the man's vision begins to blur from a sudden, intense spike in temperature. He clutches his shirt in agony, terrified that his fever is returning with a vengeance despite the medicine he just took. The hybrid looks down with a look of genuine concern, asking what's wrong as the silver-haired man pants heavily beneath him. Overwhelmed by the sudden spike in his fever, the man pushes at the protector's chest and demands he get out immediately. He frantically turns his back, shouting for the hybrid to stay far out of his sight. Refusing to leave his partner in such a vulnerable state, the hybrid stands up to take control of the medical crisis. The silver-haired man winces as a hand reaches toward him, questioning why the hybrid is initiating physical contact. Leaning in close, the protector whispers that he knows a specific method to help him feel better. Desperate to maintain his autonomy, the man pushes back and declares he will never form a soul bond. In a delirious haze, he accidentally mispronounces his accusations while trying to drive the protector away. The hybrid is momentarily stunned by the linguistic mix-up, wondering if he was just compared to a bowl of shrimp rice. The silver-haired man quickly corrects his speech, demanding to be let go so he can recover in peace. Frustrated by the lack of personal space, He calls the hybrid a beast for failing to understand his instructions. He glares intensely, wondering if the protector even understands basic human words anymore. His hand trembles against the table, accidentally knocking against a nearby ceramic mug as the fever peaks. The mug tips over, spilling its contents across the surface with a sudden, sharp clatter. The man's strength finally gives out, and he collapses forward onto the table with a heavy thud. Determined to manage the situation, the hybrid begins wiping away the mess to keep the area professional and clean. Looking up with exhausted eyes, the man can only manage a weak insult toward his persistent caretaker. He tries to push the protector away one last time, but his movements are slow and uncoordinated. The hybrid easily catches his wrist, stopping the half-hearted struggle with a firm, steady grip. He brings the hand closer, looking deeply into the man's eyes to signal his unwavering commitment to his recovery. Seeing the hybrid's playful reaction to his anger, the man's intense frustration finally begins to simmer down. He pulls his clothes tight, clearly embarrassed by the lack of boundaries during the feverish episode. Shifting back into his animal form, the wolf lets out a cheerful bark to lighten the heavy atmosphere in the room. The silver-haired man decides a bath is necessary to break the fever and begins filling the tub with warm water. He stands by the tub with bottles of shampoo, questioning if the hybrid even knows how to use human toiletries. The wolf hybrid completely submerges himself in the water, leaving only his ears and eyes poking out from the bubbles. He vigorously shakes his head, spraying water everywhere and making a complete mess of bathroom. The silver-haired man's face darkens with annoyance as his obsession with cleanliness is challenged by the wet fur. Watching the hybrid attempt to scrub himself, he realizes that beastmen truly operate on a different set of social rules. He decides it's best to find a way to let the protector stay, acknowledging he can't win a physical confrontation anyway. He reaches for a set of fresh clothes, preparing to make his guest more comfortable for the night. Looking at the garments, he ponders how natural instincts often clash with the rigid expectations of human society. Suddenly, the sharp sound of the doorbell interrupts his thoughts, catching him completely off guard. Standing outside the door is a mysterious figure in a sharp suit, arriving at the most inconvenient moment possible. Night falls over the city as the apartment lights begin to flicker on one by one. A mysterious visitor reaches out, his hand hovering over the electronic lock as he prepares to knock. The silver-haired man opens the door just a crack, insisting that his friend should just head home for the night. The visitor pauses, his fingers lingering near the doorframe in a moment of hesitation. Reaching into his coat, he pulls out a small bottle of medication he brought specifically for the man's fever. The exchange is brief and professional as the bottle is passed through the narrow opening of the door. The man's fingers brush against the plastic as he carefully secures the vital medication. With a soft click, the visitor retracts his hand as the door begins to swing shut. He clutches the bottle tightly, the only physical remnant of the brief interaction. Outside, his friend Adrian calls out one last warning about the high dosage before walking away. The man stares at the pills in silence, offering a quiet word of thanks to the now empty hallway. He turns back toward the living room, noticing a pair of ears peeking curiously from the bathroom door. Grabbing a hairdryer, he prepares to deal with the wet and shivering hybrid still hiding inside. He sighs with exhaustion, commanding the boy to finish his bath and come out immediately. He begins the technical task of drying the wolf boy's thick hair, asking him about where he originally came from. The boy lets out a joyous laugh, clearly enjoying the simple, warm sensation of the air. Looking down with a thoughtful expression, the man asks how he managed to travel such a massive distance. He continues his work with the dryer, curious about what the wild mountains actually look like. The boy excitedly describes a world filled with white snow and crystal blue ponds. A rare, genuine smile touches the man's lips as he listens to the boy's pure and innocent description. The scene shifts to a high-end clothing store filled with the latest modern fashion. Dressed in a new hoodie and cap, the wolf boy stands tall, looking remarkably like a professional model. The man handles the technical details of the transaction at the counter while the staff looks on in awe. He dismisses the old rags the boy arrived in, telling the clerk to simply toss them in the bin. The boy tries to return the expensive jacket, but the man insists it is for him to keep. His eyes light up with pure wonder as the realization of the gift finally sinks in. The man hands over a bag filled with snacks, warning him not to fling them around or make a mess. The boy hugs the bag tightly to his chest, treating the treats like a precious treasure. Inside the bag, a variety of colorful snacks promise a feast for the hungry hybrid. In a sudden burst of emotion, the boy shouts a loud proclamation of gratitude for everyone in the mall to hear. Shocked by the public display, the man's face turns a deep, embarrassed shade of crimson. He frantically covers the boy's mouth, trying to quiet the loud and awkward outbursts. He looks into the boy's eyes, wondering if he truly understands the weight of the words he just used. Standing by a yellow taxi, the man inquires about the long journey required to reach the distant mountains. The driver looks skeptical about the distance, but the promise of double the fare quickly changes his mind. After a bit of professional haggling for triple the pay, the deal is finally struck. The man leads the hesitant boy toward the open door of the waiting car. The boy suddenly panics, realizing for the first time that he is being sent away alone. He begs to stay together, his eyes sparkling with a desperate plea for the man to join him. They struggle at the car door as the boy refuses to let go of the man's sleeve in a fit of resistance. The man hardens his heart, demanding that the boy be obedient if he wants to stay in his good graces. Defeated, the boy shifts into his wolf form and huddles sadly in the back seat with his snacks. The man signals the driver to go, apologizing for the trouble as the engine starts up. He stands alone on the sidewalk, watching the taxi disappear into the busy city traffic. He stares at the empty road, knowing that human society was never the right place for someone so wild. A small pebble rests on the sun-drenched sidewalk, marking the beginning of a memory from 10 years ago. Walking home from school, a younger Xiaofang wonders why he still needs to attend cram school despite being at the top of his class. He pauses mid-stride, his attention caught by a rustling sound coming from the nearby trash bins. He spots a small black pup scavenging for scraps, and notes with pity that the poor thing is digging through the garbage again. The little stray looks up with sparkling, hungry eyes, practically drooling at the sight of a potential meal. Xiaofang quickly kneels down to peel a snack, telling the eager pup to wait just a moment while he prepares it. He sighs softly, explaining to the animal that his family is strict and won't allow him to have a dog of his own. He promises the pup that once he finally graduates and starts working, he will be able to bring him home for good. Moved by the boy's kindness, the little black dog looks up with watery, grateful eyes as if it understands every word. The pup playfully leaps onto him, and Xiaofang laughs as the little creature licks his face with pure joy. He gently cradles the animal, planning to take him for vaccinations and eventually get him sterilized to keep him healthy. Suddenly, the memory takes a violent turn as the dog's teeth sink in, resulting in a shocking and painful bite. Xiaofang ends up at the People's Hospital to receive urgent medical attention for the injury. Confined to a hospital bed, he listens as the medical staff questions if he used any specific perfume before the incident. Bandaged and confused, he insists that he can smell a powerful scent of gardenia blooming from his own skin. The doctor and nurse exchange a look of confusion, claiming they don't smell anything out of the ordinary. The doctor stares back in a long silence, unable to explain the strange phenomenon the boy is experiencing. He informs Xiaofang's relative that while the fever is high, the boy can be discharged once it subsides so he can focus on his exams. As the doctor checks his vitals, his fingers linger on Xiaofang's wrist in a way that feels technically unprofessional and unsettling. The relative notices the strange interaction and immediately pulls the boy's hand away to protect him. Sensing the tension, the doctor quickly makes an excuse to attend to other patients and leaves the room. Years later, the school bell rings, signaling the end of another day for the older students. Xiaofang is caught off guard when a fellow student suddenly makes unnecessary physical contact as he walks by. The bullies mock him, accusing him of wearing a flirtatious perfume just to get attention from those around him. He shouts back at the group, calling them perverts as they run away laughing at his visible anger. Even his teachers aren't safe from the strange allure, as one leans in far too close during a professional conversation. The man's gaze becomes intense behind his glasses, focusing on the mysterious scent he claims to detect. He grabs Xiaofang's arm firmly, offering extra help with his studies after the school day is over. Xiaofang pulls back with a look of pure disgust, threatening to report the teacher for his inappropriate harassment. Instead of receiving support, the faculty accuses him of slander, claiming he is the one causing trouble in the staff office. The situation escalates into a nightmare as he is restrained, screaming at the top of his lungs that he isn't sick. Strapped down in a cold, red-lit room, he is subjected to a cruel lecture about being the source of his own problems. He grits his teeth in fear and defiance as the staff prepares to subject him to a treatment for his condition. The shadow of the procedure looms over him, promising to make him normal again through forced intervention. Xiaofang wakes up in the present, tasting the bitterness of his past trauma as he swallows his medication. He takes a long sip of water, trying to wash away the lingering memories of those dark clinical days. A pink-haired woman enters the office, checking in on his well-being with a gentle and professional expression. Xiaofang assures his group leader that he's feeling much better and will catch up on his work immediately. She leans in close to inspect him, suddenly picking up on the unmistakable scent of a canine on his clothes. He looks away nervously, lying that he simply stopped to pet a cute stray dog on his way into the office. She offers a soft, sympathetic smile, warning him to be more careful since stray animals can be unpredictable. Xiaofang's eyes widen in fear as he pleads to be released, desperate to keep his feelings from turning into resentment. A single, crystalline tear escapes his eye, tracing a path of sorrow across his face. The figure looming over him responds with cold determination, willing to accept Xiaofang's hatred if it means staying by his side. Xiaofang's eyes snap open as the dream shifts, revealing the wolf hybrid's cheerful face hovering inches from his own. The hybrid beams with innocent hunger, leaning in close to greet his companion with a bright smile. Reality finally sets in as Xiaofang finds himself alone in his quiet bedroom, the ghost of the hybrid's presence still fresh in his mind. He closes his eyes tightly, trying to convince himself that the hybrid is too simple-minded to ever act with such aggression. Suddenly, he remembers the harsh reality that he already sent the hybrid away for good. He gasps for air, his chest heaving as the weight of the nightmare begins to fade. Sitting on the edge of his bed, Xiaofang realizes he was caught in a disorienting dream within a dream. He reflects on his fragmented memories, a lingering side effect of the brutal medical treatments from his past. He steps out of bed and slides into his slippers, trying to ground himself in the physical world. Reaching for the window, he pulls back the blinds to let the morning light wash over the room. Looking out at the street below, he calculates that it's been 3 days since the hybrid vanished. He imagines the hybrid as a chaotic, naked nuisance, reinforcing his belief that it's better for them to be apart. Turning his attention to the day ahead, he checks his phone to stay on schedule. On his way to work, he politely declines a ride, preferring the anonymity of the subway. The metallic clang of a pipe hitting the pavement shatters the morning silence. Before he can react, a group of shadowy figures lunges out from the alleyway to block his path. Xiao Fang remains remarkably composed, his gaze narrowing as he assesses the sudden threat. 3 aggressive men confront him, brandishing weapons and demanding compensation for a supposed injury. Without breaking his cool exterior, Xiao Fang bluntly asks them to name their price. The lead thug smirks, demanding an astronomical sum of 100,000 yuan for emotional damage. Xiao Fang scoffs at the ridiculous demand, suggesting they'd have better luck just robbing a bank. Angered by the defiance, the thug closes the distance and tries to intimidate him with physical force. In a flash of unexpected strength, Xiao Fang grabs the man's face and slams him toward the ground. The accomplices stand frozen in disbelief, shocked that their target has any fight in him. Seizing the moment of confusion, Xiao Fang pivots on his heel to make a break for it. He sprints through the narrow streets, hearing the thug's enraged shouts echoing behind him. He darts into a cramped alleyway, hoping to lose his pursuers in the urban maze. His escape is cut short as the trio successfully corners him against a cold brick wall. One of the men steps forward, menacingly tapping a metal rod against his palm. The thug swings the weapon with full force, but Xiao Fang narrowly avoids the blow. Xiao Fang closes his eyes for a split second, centering his focus as he recalls his past training. He remembers the voice of his instructor, reminding him to use his flexibility to compensate for his lack of raw power. Back in the alley, he moves like a blur, weaving between the thug's frantic strikes with practiced grace. As one attacker lunges with a pipe, Xiao Fang braces himself, looking for an opening to counter. A moment of doubt creeps in as he wonders if his luck has finally run out. Suddenly, a familiar figure leaps into the fray, standing defiantly between Xiao Fang and the startled thugs. With glowing red eyes and bared claws, the wolf hybrid unleashes a primal snarl, ready to tear apart anyone who dares touch Xiao Fang. The beast stands his ground, a wall of fur and fury between Xiao Fang and the thugs. Xiao Fang seizes the opening, delivering a swift, decisive strike to the lead attacker. He grips the thug's collar, his gaze cold as he threatens a grim fate for anyone who talks. Turning back, he finds the hybrid still snarling, a wild protector in the moonlight. Xiao Fang's expression softens into a mask of wary contemplation. He finally breaks the silence, asking the one question on his mind. Kano reaches out, his touch hesitant as he checks for injuries. In a moment of pure innocence, the hybrid offers a piece of bread he saved just for his companion. His calloused hands present the humble offering like a precious treasure. Xiao Fang stares at the food, paralyzed by this unexpected display of selflessness. His eyes widen, searching the hybrid's face for any sign of deception. Kano explains that eating well is the only way he can stay strong enough to protect him. His human features are filled with a raw, desperate sincerity. Clutching the bread, he begs Xiao Fang not to cast him out again. The vast alleyway emphasizes the power dynamic as the hybrid kneels before the man. Xiao Fang clenches his fist, realizing he misjudged the creature's motives entirely. He asks why a half-human would abandon his dignity and family to follow him. Kano looks up with a tilted head, confused by the mention of ancestors. He takes a defiant bite of the bread, insisting he has nowhere else to go. Xiao Fang suddenly grabs him, demanding to know the hybrid's true identity. As their gazes lock, Xiao Fang is haunted by memories of a figure from his dreams. The hybrid stuns him by revealing he already knows his name is Fang Li. He explains that while he was once mute, he is now Kano. Fang Li's eyes cloud with suspicion as he tries to connect the dots. A fragmented memory of a scarred, powerful back flashes through his mind. Breaking the tension, Fang Li orders the stinky hybrid to stop eating trash and wash up. The pair begins to walk, a strange truce forming in the quiet night. Fang Li clarifies that they are heading to his apartment, not another abandonment. Kano's joy is immediate, his tail practically wagging at the news. Back at the flat, Fang Li manages work calls while preparing for his guests. He expertly slices vegetables and meat, deciding on a proper meal over pet food. He presents the finished dish, just as the bathroom door swings open. Kano emerges from the steam, looking refreshed and remarkably human after his shower. Fang Li observes him quietly, wondering how much human social awareness the hybrid actually possesses. Kano tries to serve Fang Li first, referring to him with an inappropriately domestic title. Fang Li immediately shuts down the terminology with a sharp reprimand. He explains the basics of human society and sets a strict 1-week probationary period. Kano slumps over his plate, dejected by the harsh conditions of his stay. Fang Li leaves him with a final command to hide his animal features and stay quiet. A sudden voice at the door catches Fang Li completely off guard. An elegant, stylish man stands there, offering help to an increasingly overwhelmed Fang Li. The sound of polished shoes clicking against the floor signals the arrival of an unexpected guest. Fang Li stands frozen, his expression a mix of guilt and confusion as he faces the man who just invited himself in. The contrast is jarring between Fang Li's casual indoor footwear and the visitor's expensive, professional attire. The man, Jian, pulls Fang Li into a close embrace, firmly reminding him that they are childhood friends and, more importantly, a couple. He tilts Fang Li's chin up, his gaze searching for an explanation for the awkward atmosphere. The moment is shattered when a shirtless Kano storms into the hallway, his face twisted in a look of pure confusion. Jian's eyes narrow instantly, shifting his focus to the muscular stranger standing in his boyfriend's apartment. A heavy silence fills the room as the three men square off in the narrow corridor. Desperate to de-escalate, Fang Li quickly spins a lie, claiming Kano is just the son of an old family friend named Auntie Wang. He continues the fabrication with a nervous sweat, insisting that Kano isn't very bright and simply needs some temporary supervision. Kano, completely oblivious to the insult, begins curiously sniffing the visitor like a wild animal. Fang Li physically moves Jian away, explaining that he's only helping the relative get settled before he finds a job and moves out. Kano watches the exchange with a piercing look, sensing immediately that Fang Li is hiding the truth from his guest. Trying to play the perfect host, Fang Li offers the visitor some tea while Kano celebrates the chance to stay in the background. Despite the hospitality, Jian's eyes remain sharp, scanning the room for any more inconsistencies. A steaming cup of coffee is placed on the table, but the tension in the air is far from being soothed. The living room becomes a stage for an incredibly awkward standoff between the professional visitor and the wild house guest. Jian leans toward Fang Li, his voice dropping to a low, serious tone. He demands to know why Fang Li would let a strange man stay here without considering his partner's feelings. He reaches out to take Fang Li's hand, his touch possessive and demanding. Jian offers a solution. He will pay for a separate apartment for Kano so the relative can leave immediately. Fang Li politely declines the generous offer, maintaining that the arrangement is strictly temporary for 1 week. Sensing his influence slipping, Jian leans his head onto Fang Li's shoulder, playing the part of the hurt and neglected boyfriend. While acting vulnerable, Jian shoots a cold, warning glare toward Kano, who remains on high alert. Kano ignores the hostility, focused instead on finishing his meal while draped in nothing but a towel. Jian asks if Fang Li still doesn't trust him, pushing for an emotional commitment that isn't quite there. Fang Li finally ushers Jian toward the exit, telling him to head back to the office while he handles things at home. Jian's expression hardens as he realizes he's being pushed away. He turns his back to leave, his parting words dripping with a hidden, icy meaning. He reveals his hand, noting that in 10 years of friendship, he has never once heard of an Auntie Wang. The door slams shut, leaving Fang Li standing alone in the quiet hallway to process the confrontation. Fang Li reflects on the massive gaps in his own memory, wondering why his past feels so hollow. He clutches his head in frustration, admitting to himself that he struggles to feel any real connection to the man who claims to be his boyfriend. His internal spiraling is interrupted by a hand reaching out to grab his own. Kano stands there with an empty plate, looking completely innocent as he asks for seconds. Fang Li sighs, realizing he'll need to stock up on dog food if he's going to survive this week with his new housemate. Back at a corporate office, the morning sun hits the workspace of a high-ranking executive. President Ling, a man with vibrant pink hair, looks up from his phone with a tired expression. Jian stands before him, questioning why Fang Li has been requesting so much time off recently. Ling recalls the strange scent he picked up from Fang Li and the flimsy excuse about meeting a small dog. Jian's brow furrows with intense suspicion as he realizes the pieces of the puzzle just aren't adding up. Fang Li starts the evening by scooping a massive portion of rice to feed his unexpected guest. He realizes that with such a hungry mouth to feed, simple white rice is the only way to keep his budget intact. Meanwhile, Kano is already busy making a mess of his snacks on the floor. The wolf looks like he stepped straight out of a shampoo commercial, radiating a bizarrely majestic glow. Fang Li calls out that dinner is served, and the wolf is more than ready. Kano's eyes sparkle with pure joy at the sight of the giant bowl prepared just for him. However, the meal becomes a chaotic disaster as rice flies everywhere, while the wolf eats. Fang Li stares down at the animal's large paws, wondering about the logistics of the situation. He asks if it's possible for the beast to use a spoon, but he's met with a blank stare. Kano gives it a shot, but the chopsticks immediately clatter to the ground, useless in his grip. Resigned to his fate, Fang Li begins the tedious process of cleaning the floor with a lint roller. He sighs, realizing that despite the different form, the amount of shedding is a nightmare to manage. He points the wolf toward the couch, declaring that will be his bed for the night. Kano tries to win him over with a pair of puppy dog eyes, but Fang Li remains strictly professional. Night falls over the city, casting the apartment into deep shadows. The wolf curls up by the entrance, seemingly settling in for a quiet night. Suddenly, his paws begin to twitch violently as a nightmare takes hold. He wakes up in a panic, scratching at the door and howling for Fang Li in distress. Fang Li emerges from his room, rubbing his eyes and exhausted by the sudden commotion. Before he can react, a massive shadow lunges toward him through the dark hallway. The wolf stands guard with a terrifying intensity, claiming he rushed in because he heard Fang Li screaming. Fang Li pauses, wondering if he was actually sleep-talking without realizing it. He tries to dismiss the beast, but the wolf refuses to leave his side, giving in to the exhaustion. Fang Li allows the creature to take up a spot at the foot of his bed. The next morning, the bright sun begins to filter through the blinds. Fang Li wakes up to find that the wolf has reverted to human form and is now resting right against him. In his sleep, Kano leans in, maintaining a close proximity that catches Fang Li off guard. Fang Li's eyes fly open as he realizes the situation has shifted entirely overnight. Without a second thought, he shoves the hybrid off the bed to reclaim his personal space. Later at the office, Fang Li reviews his files, hoping his recent absences haven't put him in hot water. He enters the supervisor's office to hand over the latest clinical trial data. The team leader takes the papers, but points out that Fang Li's attendance record has become a serious issue. To solve this, the leader suggests hiring an assistant, a proposal that Fang Li immediately rejects in his head. The executive explains that while Fang Li is efficient, the constant disruptions to the workflow cannot continue. Fang Li stands his ground, insisting he can manage the workload without any outside help. The team leader lets the matter drop for the moment, dismissing him from the office. Once alone, the executive reaches for a device to check on his ongoing investigation. He wonders why a man who usually avoids social contact would get tangled up with someone like Kano. His eyes narrow as he analyzes the data he's gathered so far. On the screen, a photo shows Kano acting like a perfectly normal, friendly person in public. The leader smiles to himself, finally confirming the identity of the man who left his mark on Fang Li. In the office, Fang Li is blindsided when his supervisor introduces the newest hire to the team. Kano beams with pure excitement, looking ready to start his professional journey with enthusiasm. Fang Li can barely process the absurdity of the situation, wondering how this happened. The supervisor explains that Kano was found wandering near the building and was recruited on the spot to assist. Fang Li immediately protests, pointing out that Kano lacks the basic technical skills required for standard office work. Jian's expression shifts, his gaze becoming unreadable as he listens to the objections. Desperate to keep things under control, Fang Li fabricates a story about Kano being a distant relative who is currently without proper documentation. Ignoring the obvious red flags, the supervisor decides it's a perfect arrangement and assigns Fang Li as the mentor. While the others celebrate the new partnership, Fang Li feels completely sidelined in the decision-making process. A fresh tray of coffee is served to help the group settle into their new workflow. Instructions are given to finalize the onboarding paperwork and employment contract immediately. Fang Li remains skeptical, certain that the upper management will never sign off on such an unconventional hire. To his surprise, the supervisor reveals that President Ling has already greenlit the entire process personally. The realization that his strict boss approved this move leaves Fang Li reeling in total confusion. As he takes a pensive sip of coffee, he wonders why Jian is suddenly being so accommodating toward Kano. When questioned about why Kano isn't drinking, Fang Li explains that he's simply waiting for the beverage to reach a safer temperature. The mood shifts instantly when the supervisor's phone begins to buzz with an urgent incoming call. He quickly dismisses the unknown caller, clearly disturbed by the persistent vibration of his device. A chilling text message appears on the screen, indicating that someone has tracked his location with predatory precision. A wave of dread washes over him as he imagines a dark, looming presence watching his every move from the shadows. Shaken by the message, he makes a hasty exit, leaving the others behind to handle the remaining office tasks. Kano pushes his unwanted drink toward Fang Li, showing a total lack of interest in the caffeine. Later that evening, the heavy doors of the bus hiss open as the two head home after a long day. Amidst the evening commute, Kano stands guard to ensure Fang Li isn't jostled by the crowded bus. Fang Li checks his phone one last time, frustrated by the total lack of communication from Jian. Kano watches his companion closely, sensing the growing tension and fatigue in his posture. Finally reaching the apartment, Fang Li fumbles with his keys to unlock the door. A heavy, expectant silence falls between them as they stand in the dim light of the hallway. Breaking the quiet, Kano speaks up with a sudden and serious intensity. He asks if he could ever be considered as a permanent partner or a dedicated protector. Fang Li's face flushes a deep red as a sudden wave of physical exhaustion and heat hits him. He clutches his head, struggling to stay upright as his vision begins to blur and spin. He realizes with horror that his biological suppressants are failing him at the worst possible time. As Fang Li loses his balance, Kano catches him with lightning-fast reflexes to prevent a dangerous fall. Kano carefully lays him down on the outdoor sofa, desperately trying to assess the severity of the sudden fever. Fang Li can only gasp for air, his body temperature rising to levels that require immediate attention. Determined to provide relief, Kano begins to remove his outer layers to help regulate the heat and provide cooling medical comfort. Kano quickly sheds his shirt, determined to help lower Fang Li's skyrocketing body temperature during this sudden crisis. He meets Fang Li's confused gaze, explaining that he's only trying to help him cool down from the intense fever. Without hesitation, Kano pulls him into a firm embrace, offering his own body as a cooling anchor for the overwhelmed man. He ignores the weak protests and struggles, insisting that he can provide the physical support and care any partner should. Fang Li's vision begins to cloud as he realizes just how soothing and pleasant Kano's presence actually is. His hand trembles as it brushes against Kano's skin, his internal heat reaching a dangerous breaking point. Dazed and completely disoriented, Fang Li can barely process the intensity of the biological reaction taking over. He tries to recoil in a sudden burst of shock, his instincts warring with his extreme physical exhaustion. He stares blankly into the distance, wondering why his medical suppressants have failed so completely to stop this reaction. Kano catches his hand midair, holding it steady to provide a much-needed sense of grounding. He leans in with a focused intensity, promising that they will get through this physical distress together. Fang Li bites his lip in frustration, cursing his own lack of control in the presence of the wolf hybrid. His breathing becomes heavy and labored as the fever takes full control of his senses and strength. Despite his fading energy, he tells himself he must regain his composure and stop this before it goes too far. He manages a weak plea for Kano to cease his actions, though his body feels like it's made of lead. Much later, Kano flashes a triumphant and innocent grin, clearly proud of how he cared for his friend. Fang Li looks away with a somber expression, reminding Kano that he is technically still in a relationship with a Jian. A chibi version of Kano pouts, wondering if that distant partner could ever truly take care of Fang Li as well as he does. Kano's expression softens into sadness as he reflects on the past, remembering a time when their bond was much simpler. A flashback reveals a younger Fang Li protectively cradling a tiny, abandoned black wolf pup in his arms. A Jian stands behind him in the woods, looking down at the stray animal with obvious disdain and suspicion. Fang Li ignores the criticism, vowing to save his own money to get the pup the proper vaccinations and medical care it needs. A Jian tries to usher him away, dismissively claiming the wild animal is far too much trouble to keep. He reaches out and grabs Fang Li's arm, attempting to force him to leave the creature behind in the forest. Fang Li yanks his arm back, demanding that a Jian stop following him and finally respect his personal boundaries. A Jian is left standing alone in the distance, a cold and controlling shadow over Fang Li's past. Fang Li turns back to the pup with a warm, genuine smile, finding more true companionship in the small animal than in his human partner. The pup nuzzles affectionately into his palm, sealing a loyal bond that would clearly last a lifetime. The room is shrouded in a heavy silence, lit only by the faint, lonely glow of a bedside lamp. Fang Li lies awake in the dark, his mind racing as a sudden notification chime cuts through the quiet. He sits up slowly, his face illuminated by the cold, digital glare of his smartphone. His expression is weighed down by a somber realization, knowing he can no longer run from the truth. With a steady hand, he types out a message to a Jian, requesting a face-to-face meeting to settle things. He places the phone face down on the mattress, the finality of the action echoing in the empty room. Standing tall and fully dressed, he steels his resolve, determined to end the cycle once and for all. The door hinges give a faint, high-pitched creak as he prepares to step out. He moves through the dim hallway with a focused stride, his gaze fixed on the task ahead. Under the cold light of a crescent moon, he looks over the balcony and firmly tells his guardian to stop sleeping by the door and move to the sofa. Morning light eventually floods the apartment, where the massive black wolf sits waiting for his next command. Fang Li looks away, acknowledging the wolf's help but maintaining a professional distance to guard his heart. He reaches into the cupboard, pulling out a bag of specialized pet food for the creature's breakfast. As he sets the meal down, he issues a stern warning for the wolf to stay put and stay out of trouble while he's gone. Despite his firm words, he finds himself staring at the wolf's thick, shimmering coat. A moment of pure temptation crosses his face as he admires the soft texture of the fur. His hand begins to reach out, drawn by an almost irresistible urge to touch the creature. He catches himself at the last second, pulling his hand back and clenching it into a tight fist of restraint. Later that day, a massive Ferris wheel towers over the city's skyline, serving as the backdrop for a tense confrontation. Inside a private cabin, Fang Li sits across from a Jian, who reveals he has officially hired Kano as an assistant. A Jian wears a smug, calculated smile, noting that a steady paycheck means the wolf hybrid can finally move out. Fang Li remains skeptical, his eyes narrowing as he questions the true motive behind this sudden generosity. A Jian maintains a facade of the caring partner, insisting his only goal is to solve Fang Li's domestic problems. Fang Li's grip tightens on his own lap as he finally forces out the words to end their relationship. The air in the cabin turns frigid as a Jian's face falls, his voice trembling as he refuses to accept the breakup. Fang Li looks down, softly explaining that he has only ever seen a Jian as a friend from his past. A Jian's eyes flash with a desperate, dark obsession, vowing to wait for him through this life and the next. Fang Li meets his gaze with a weary, unwavering clarity, stating that he simply doesn't feel the same. Losing his composure, a Jian snaps, demanding to know if his feelings for the assistant are the reason for this rejection. Fang Li stands his ground, reminding him that this is the fourth time he has tried to walk away. He grips his sleeve tightly, anchoring himself against the rising tension in the small space. With a final heavy breath, he looks away and reaffirms that his decision is absolute. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts as a Jian lunges forward in a blur of aggressive movement. Fang Li's eyes widen in shock as he is suddenly cornered against the cabin wall. A terrifying change overcomes a Jian as his pupils constrict and his eyes bleed into a glowing, supernatural red. Looking down with a predatory intensity, Aegean whispers a dark promise to force Fang Li to remember their shared history. Fang Li can only stare back, paralyzed by the sudden display of power. The light of consciousness begins to drain from his purple eyes, leaving behind a vacant, hollow stare. His strength completely fails him, and he slumps forward into Aegean's waiting arms. Aegean pulls him into a possessive embrace, his grip tightening as he claims victory over Fang Li's fading will. Under the blooming cherry blossoms, Aegean pulls Fang Li into a tight embrace, loudly proclaiming to the world that they are finally a couple. Fang Li's face flushes with a mix of confusion and embarrassment as he pleads for Aegean to lower his voice before the onlookers take notice. As their hands lock together, a sense of déjà vu washes over Fang Li, making him feel like a mere spectator watching a movie of his own life. Suddenly, the scene shifts, and he finds himself waking up in the modest rental apartment he lived in years ago. He rubs his eyes in a daze, his mind racing as he realizes his work schedule is filled with tasks for a medication that was released an entire year in the past. A quick glance at his phone confirms his worst fear. He has lost his memory and is trapped in a mental loop. He stands before the television, paralyzed as the news anchor announces a date from 2 years prior. The phone in his hand dings with a sudden notification, pulling his attention back to the digital screen. He stares at a 1-year anniversary message from Aegean, realizing that his sense of time has been completely shattered. The entire illusion begins to crack and splinter like glass, revealing dark fragments of his real, suppressed memories. Fang Li's eyes snap open in the real world, his pupils dilated as he struggles to regain his bearings. He clutches his throbbing head in the passenger seat of a car, the line between his dreams and reality becoming dangerously blurred. From the driver's seat, President Ling glances over, noting that his companion has finally returned to consciousness. Fang Li continues to rub his temples, his voice shaky as he asks how he managed to fall asleep so abruptly. Ling keeps his eyes on the road, explaining that Fang Li collapsed while they were on the Ferris wheel, likely due to a reaction to his medication. To help him recover, Ling hands over a cold bottle of water, suggesting the faint was caused by a sudden drop in blood sugar. Fang Li takes a sip, but his mind is reeling because he distinctly remembers going to the park to break up with Aegean, not to go on a ride. His eyes suddenly lock onto something outside the window, his gaze sharpening with disbelief. In the distance, he spots Kano sprinting down the sidewalk at superhuman speeds, his wolf ears fluttering wildly in the wind for everyone to see. The sight causes Fang Li to break into a fit of shocked coughing, prompting Ling to reach out a hand to steady him. Despite his weakened state, Fang Li watches the passing scenery with intense focus, knowing he has to intervene before a disaster occurs. Once the car pulls over, he steps out onto the curb, insisting that Ling head back to the office without him so he can have a moment of peace. Ling watches him with a cold, observant gaze, his expression unreadable as he prepares to drive off. As soon as the car is gone, Fang Li's boots hit the pavement as he rounds the corner to find the source of the commotion. Kano appears in an instant, panting heavily with a wide, innocent grin, thrilled to have caught up to his ally. Without a word of greeting, Fang Li reaches out and firmly seizes the wolf hybrid's wrist to stop him in his tracks. He quickly drags the confused Kano away from the main thoroughfare to avoid any prying eyes. They duck into the shadows of a narrow alleyway between the towering city buildings to ensure their conversation remains private. Fang Li's frustration boils over as he grabs the front of Kano's shirt, demanding to know why he disobeyed the direct order to stay hidden. He pulls the hybrid close, his face inches from Kano's as he scolds him for being so incredibly reckless with his secret. Kano wilts under the pressure, looking down with a guilty expression as he explains that he saw Fang Li faint and couldn't stop himself from following the car. Fang Li's grip on the fabric tightens, his voice dropping as he realizes the sheer danger Kano has put himself in. Finally losing his patience, he pins Kano against the cold brick wall, shouting that the entire world will find out he's an anthro if he keeps acting this way. 10 years ago, chaos erupted as bystanders screamed that a stray dog had attacked a local boy. A flash of feral instinct flickered within the creature's glowing red eyes during the confrontation, but the hostility quickly vanished, replaced by a deep, soulful blue gaze full of confusion. Fang Li lay dazed on the pavement, staring up at the small black pup that seemed to be checking on his condition. Before the boy could say a word, a heavy broom slammed into the pup to drive it away from the scene. An angry worker shouted threats, determined to beat the stray for its perceived aggression toward the child. Despite the pain of the strike, the pup tried to crawl back toward the bleeding Fang Li. Another brutal blow sent the small animal tumbling back into the dirt as he whimpered in pain. The violence continued relentlessly, leaving the pup crying out as the strikes landed again and again. Through blurred vision, the pup watched the world begin to fade into a haze of flashing lights and sirens. He could only watch from a distance as a medical team arrived to provide emergency care for Fang Li. As the ambulance doors closed, the pup felt a crushing sense of guilt for the boy's injuries. Severely wounded and abandoned, the small creature began a slow, painful retreat from the area. He eventually made it back to the school gates, watching the students from the safety of the shadows. His eyes lit up with pure joy when he finally spotted the familiar face he had been searching for. But his happiness was cut short by a sudden, sharp sting in his neck from a projectile. A city dog catcher loomed over him, declaring that no strays were allowed to wander the streets. The man pinned the pup down with his boot, showing no mercy to the small, wounded animal. He roughly hoisted the pup into the air, treating him like nothing more than a nuisance to be disposed of. Without a second thought, the catcher tossed the pup into a bin full of cold, hard refuse. The heavy engine of a garbage truck roared to life, signaling the start of a grim journey to the outskirts. The pup eventually found himself discarded in a massive, desolate landfill far away from the city. He slowly blinked his eyes open, surrounded by mountains of rotting waste and debris. Driven by a desperate will to survive, he began to scavenge through the trash bags for anything edible. He managed to find a small scrap of discarded food buried beneath the plastic. Despite the arrow still lodged in his shoulder, he forced himself to eat to regain his strength. Every movement was a struggle as he checked his wounded, limping paw for damage. Standing alone in the wasteland, he looked out at the vast horizon, searching for a way back. He began a grueling trek back toward civilization, driven by the singular need to find Fang Li. He stopped only briefly to hydrate at a small forest pool along his journey. Dangerous wildlife blocked his path, forcing him to navigate a treacherous wilderness. Days turned into weeks as he followed the long, winding roads back toward the city center. He finally returned to the old neighborhood, sitting patiently on the sidewalk for a familiar face to walk by. However, the local children were cruel, chasing him away with rocks and angry shouts. Hiding in the shadows, he overheard the neighbors whispering about the boy who used to live there. He learned the heartbreaking news that Fang Li had moved away to escape the local rumors. As the rain began to pour over the urban skyline, the pup felt more alone than ever before. He vowed that no matter how long it took, he would find Fang Li and take responsibility for him. Seeking shelter from the storm, he realized that he had to learn to become human to stay by the boy's side. Back in the present, Kano offers a sincere apology for his recent reckless behavior in public. Fang Li maintains a firm professional boundary, telling him that he needs to handle his own problems from now on. Kano desperately reaches out, insisting that his only wish is to stay close and protect Fang Li. Fang Li remains silent, his expression unreadable as he processes the intensity of the hybrid's request. He gently moves to end the conversation, signaling that he cannot continue to provide this level of care. He suggests that since Kano has found steady employment, it is time for him to find his own place to live. In a heartwarming memory, a younger Fang Li holds the little pup close with genuine affection. A magical puff of smoke signals a sudden and unexpected shift in the atmosphere. A spread of hearty meat and fresh greens is laid out on the table for a final quiet meal together. Fang Li maintains a calm, professional demeanor as he informs Kano that he'll begin searching for a new apartment for him starting tomorrow. The atmosphere remains heavy as Kano processes the reality of his impending departure from the household. Kano fixates on the dish before him, his eyes sparkling with a new determination to master human customs. His fingers tremble slightly as he attempts to grasp the slippery food with unfamiliar chopsticks. Noticing the struggle, Fang Li kindly suggests switching to a spoon to make the meal easier for him. With a burst of stubborn energy, Kano insists that he can handle the challenge of using the utensils on his own. He watches Fang Li's hand movements with clinical precision, memorizing every finger placement. Adjusting his grip, Kano focuses all his concentration on the technical task of handling the wooden sticks. A look of pure triumph washes over his face as he successfully lifts a piece of meat for the first time. He proudly presents his success to Fang Li, seeking validation for his quick progress in learning human skills. Fang Li accepts the gesture, realizing that Kano is adapting to independent life much faster than expected. Kano leans in with renewed vigor, eager to share the meal and ensure his mentor is well fed. He insists that Fang Li needs the extra protein to build up his physical strength and health. Even while eating his own portion, Kano's primary focus remains on taking care of Fang Li's needs first. The training shifts to the office the next day, where Fang Li demonstrates the technical operation of the scanner. Kano stands ready to replicate the process, eager to prove his worth in a professional office setting. He carefully navigates the control panel, mindful of Fang Li's warnings about the equipment's sensitivity. Fang Li observes from a distance, noting that Kano possesses an incredibly sharp and intuitive memory for technical tasks. Their work is interrupted by Jian, who arrives with news about a team leader taking an unexpected leave of absence. Jian announces that a new colleague will be joining the department to fill the gap later that afternoon. The news of a fresh arrival in the office leaves Fang Li feeling a sense of cautious curiosity. Fang Li questions the sudden departure of their superior, wondering what caused such a shift in the team. Kano's keen senses pick up a subtle, unsettling change in Jian's scent as the man speaks. Jian quickly dismisses himself, leaving Fang Li to manage the remaining workload on his own. Kano keeps his guard up, acknowledging the order, while remaining suspicious of the man's true intentions. Later, Jian discusses the company's expansion plans while walking through the corridor with Fang Li. Fang Li keeps the conversation strictly focused on logistics, mentioning the search for Kano's new housing. Jian puts on a friendly facade, claiming he's relieved that the current living arrangement will soon change. Fang Li attempts to clarify the professional boundaries of their relationship, but he is suddenly cut off. Ajian winces in sudden physical distress, clutching his chest as if struck by a sharp pain. Fang Li immediately steps in to offer support, concerned by the sudden and unexpected health crisis. Despite his visible suffering, Ajian insists that he is fine and doesn't need any serious medical attention. He struggles through a fit of coughing, making himself appear increasingly frail and vulnerable to his companion. Ajian leans heavily on Fang Li for support, refusing to go to the hospital while resting for a moment. Back at home, the technical training continues as Fang Li explains the mechanics of the washing machine. The peaceful atmosphere is shattered when someone loses their footing on the slick, wet floor. A steady hand rests on the edge of a wooden crate as the final stage of the move begins. In the suburbs, a mover questions why such a young man would choose to relocate so far from the city center. Ajian offers a gentle, rehearsed smile, claiming he simply prefers a life unburdened by too many possessions. With the job finished, the worker asks for a high rating before heading back to his truck. The heavy door clicks shut, sealing Ajian away in his new, isolated sanctuary. He leans back against the frame, satisfied that he has chosen a location far from any prying eyes. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of a prestigious pet products company, the corporate atmosphere is thick with professional standards. Ruan Lu, the company's chief financial officer, maintains a sharp and intimidating presence as he reviews the personnel. He questions the hiring standards when he learns that a new assistant lacks the typical high-level medical degree. Fang Li quickly jumps in to explain that Kano is only there to handle basic logistical tasks like document printing. Kano stands by awkwardly, feeling the weight of the executive's scrutiny. His instincts flare up as he stares back, sensing something unusual about the man in the suit. An intense gaze passes between them, as if both are trying to decipher the other's true nature. Breaking the tension, Kano shifts into a friendly persona, offering a bright and energetic greeting. Ruan Lu is momentarily taken aback, noting that the young man's enthusiasm is remarkably similar to a husky. Despite his cold exterior, the executive's attention shifts toward the elegant details of the office environment. The rich aroma of fresh coffee fills the room as the machine begins its morning cycle. Fang Li serves a fresh cup to the CFO, who is eager to discuss the whereabouts of the missing team leader. Ruan Lu takes a slow sip, noting that the flavor is exactly as refined as he remembers it being in the past. Seeing the treat, Kano pops his head in and eagerly asks if he can have a cup as well. Fang Li has to firmly remind him that coffee isn't suitable for his unique constitution. Refocusing on business, Ruan Lu demands to know exactly where the team leader's private office is located. Kano points down the hall, indicating that the entire suite at the end belongs to the boss. The group watches in silence as the CFO prepares to make his move. Without a moment's hesitation, Ruan Lu enters the restricted area and shuts the door behind him. Fang Li hesitates, worried about the breach of privacy since the leader notoriously hovers touching his things. Before he can intervene, a hand reaches out and firmly grips his sleeve to hold him back. Kano whispers that there is no need to worry, as the two men clearly share a prior connection. Fang Li is stunned, wondering how Kano could possibly know that when no names were ever mentioned. Kano taps his ear with a confident grin, boasting about his incredibly sharp sense of hearing. He claims he can even track the subtle sounds of movement coming from deep within the closed office. Fang Li quickly pulls him away, scolding him for attempting to eavesdrop on a private corporate matter. Inside the quiet office, Ruan Lu stands alone, surrounded by the shadows of a vacant workspace. He approaches the desk, his eyes searching for any sign of the person who left so abruptly. His hand reaches out to pick up a framed photograph that has been left face down on the desk. As he looks at the image of Ajian, the realization hits him that he has been deceived this entire time. Ajian settles into his temporary hideout, surrounded by packed bags while assuring his caller that he is recovering well. He confirms that a new apartment has been secured close to the company, all while absent-mindedly clutching a bag of specialized pet food. Despite his wary expression, he politely declines any further assistance, insisting that he can manage the transition on his own. As the line goes dead, Ajian stares at his phone, puzzled by the persistent concern coming from the other end. His attention shifts to a large green package sitting on the floor, a remnant of his late-night habits. He opens the container to reveal an assortment of pet accessories, ranging from tennis balls to miniature outfits. A quick mental backtrack reveals that a bout of insomnia led to an impulsive online shopping spree for these unnecessary items. The massive black wolf watches with predatory focus, its eyes locked onto the potential new toys. Ajian decides to test the equipment, tossing a bright green ball into the air for the beast to track. With lightning-fast reflexes, the wolf snaps the ball out of the air, gripping it firmly between its powerful jaws. Ajian sternly reminds his companion to maintain a human form, worried about the mess of shedding fur in the small apartment. He reaches out to retrieve the toy, hoping to keep the training session organized and efficient. To his dismay, the ball has been reduced to a mangled mess of rubber and felt in a matter of seconds. Now in human form, Kano stands tall, his expression clouding with a clear lack of interest in the proposed attire. Ajian turns his back to maintain a professional distance, emphasizing that their living arrangement is strictly a matter of necessity regardless of what Kano wears. Kano closes the gap, placing a steadying hand on Ajian's shoulder to regain his attention. Looking over the supplies, Kano asks for clarification on whether these technical items were intended specifically for his use. Ajian thrusts the box toward him, him, insisting that since the items were already purchased, Kano might as well take responsibility for them. Kano pulls out a frilly blue garment, holding the tiny fabric up with a look of utter bewilderment. He stares intensely at Ajian, his gaze sharpening as he processes the strange gift. Ajian looks back with a weary sigh, reminding the hybrid that he must learn to be self-sufficient as an adult. Kano reaches out, his fingers brushing against Ajian's hand in a silent request for focus. He leans in with a sudden, intense seriousness, reminding Ajian that his biological nature isn't governed by human logic. Ajian is caught off guard by the sudden shift in atmosphere, wondering why his companion is being so persistent today. Kano looms closer, his proximity forcing Ajian to realize that managing a hybrid is far more complex than any standard office assignment. Ajian's eyes widen in sudden realization as he notices the frantic, glazed-over look in Kano's eyes. The hybrid leans in with a feverish intensity, his animalistic instincts completely overriding his human logic. Ajian recalls their previous encounters, realizing that this current biological surge is far more powerful than anything he has witnessed before. A dark tail flickers uncontrollably behind the hybrid, a clear physical sign that he has lost all self-restraint. Slowly, the haze begins to lift from Kano's gaze as he finally starts to regain his senses. In a momentary burst of confused energy, the hybrid pins Ajian down, only to be met with a stern command to sit properly. Ajian quickly grabs the hybrid's wrists, firmly pinning them down to stabilize the chaotic situation. Taking advantage of the brief pause, Ajian sits up to catch his breath and assess the damage. Kano looks away in deep shame, his voice barely a whisper as he offers a sincere apology for his lack of control. Ajian remains silent for a moment, his fingers grazing his own chin as he processes the intensity of the struggle. He notices a sharp sting on his hand, where a small wound has begun to bleed after the hybrid's accidental bite. He stares at the injury with a look of quiet concern, realizing the physical toll this biological fever is taking on them both. Watching the hybrid tremble, Ajian begins to worry if Kano's body can even withstand the stress of this current condition. Seeing Kano slumped helplessly against the door, Ajian realizes the hybrid has exhausted all his strength and considers using a sedative shot to help him. His gaze softens with a mix of technical assessment and genuine sympathy for his companion's plight. Suddenly, Ajian finds himself gasping for air, his own heart racing as the heavy atmosphere in the room begins to affect him. His legs feel weak and unsteady, making it nearly impossible for him to maintain his composure. Despite the risk, Ajian reaches out and pulls the hybrid into a firm, grounding embrace to provide much-needed support. He leans his head against the hybrid's shoulder, trying to find a sense of calm amidst the lingering tension. Closing his eyes, Ajian finds himself remarkably comforted by the hybrid's unique, natural scent. Kano's eyes widen in a daze as his heightened hybrid senses take over, leaving him unable to process the reality of the situation clearly. Ajian feels a sudden, magnetic pull toward the hybrid, realizing that their shared biological bond is becoming impossible to ignore. The shift in behavior is jarring for Kano, who was struggling with a cold rejection only moments before this sudden turn. Ajian's own internal temperature begins to spike, making him wonder why the hybrid is suddenly taking such a bold, instinctual initiative. In a moment of overwhelming pressure, the two are drawn into a tight, grounding embrace as they try to stabilize their erratic heartbeats. The physical proximity is intense, with every breath and movement amplified in the heavy silence of the room. Kano leans in closer, his wolf-like instincts focused entirely on finding comfort in the presence of his caretaker. Ajian's expression softens as he begins to succumb to the sheer exhaustion of managing the hybrid's biological surge. Struggling with the rising heat of the fever, Ajian tries to adjust his collar to get some much-needed air. He warns Kano to keep his distance for his own safety, but the hybrid is too far gone into his instincts to listen to reason. Kano's grip tightens on Ajian's shirt, refusing to let his only source of stability drift away during the crisis. Without warning, Kano lifts Ajian with ease, his raw, hybrid strength fully fueled by the biological surge. Ajian's eyes snap wide in alarm, issuing a sharp plea for the hybrid to stop before the situation spirals further out of control. Kano covers his face with his hands, fighting a losing battle against the overwhelming sensory overload clouding his mind. Glaring through his fingers, Kano's predatory instincts flash briefly as he struggles to maintain even a shred of his composure. Realizing the situation requires immediate medical intervention, Ajian reaches for the bedside drawer to find the necessary supplies. He prepares the syringe, knowing that a clinical dose of suppression is the only way to stabilize the hybrid's erratic state. With the medication ready, Ajian looks down at the now docile Kano, who leans against him in a state of total, exhausted vulnerability. As the biological crisis finally passes, Ajian lies back, completely drained by the emotional and physical toll of the night. He stares into the distance, his mind racing with questions about Kano's true intentions and the risks of their current arrangement. Looking over at the sleeping hybrid, Ajian realizes that leaving him alone might be a risk that neither of them is ready to take. In his sleep, Kano whispers a soft, pained apology that manages to pierce through Ajian's defensive walls. Ajian reflects on their shared history, wondering if the original incident years ago was also just a byproduct of lost control. He reaches out to touch Kanyuo's hair, a rare moment of genuine tenderness amidst the lingering tension. He pulls his hand back slowly as he questions why Kanyuo never came looking for him during those long 10 years apart. The internal conflict deepens as Ajian stares at the ceiling, wondering if forgiveness is even possible after everything they've been through. Ajian awakens to a refreshing scent that reminds him of morning dew and fresh grass. He reaches out, his hand brushing against something soft and unexpected in the dim morning light. Sitting up abruptly, he finds himself cradling a tiny, fluffy bundle of black fur against his chest. He lifts the creature higher, realizing the source of the mysterious scent is this adorable little puppy. Shock washes over his face as he stares at the unexpected guest sitting right in his lap. The little cub remains blissfully unaware of the chaos, drifting back into a deep, peaceful slumber. Ajian looks around the empty bed, wondering if this strange transformation is just a vivid dream. He searches the sheets for any sign of the adult Kano, but the man has completely vanished. A sudden, startling realization hits him as he looks back down at the small wolf in his hands. He gently shakes the cub, desperate for confirmation that this tiny creature is actually his companion. The cub slowly blinks, its heavy eyes open, looking up at Ajian with a groggy and confused expression. Ajian places the small wolf on the bed, demanding to know how he could have possibly shrunk so much overnight. The cub explains that adopting this smaller form is a necessary survival tactic to conserve his dwindling energy and recover faster. Overcome by exhaustion, the tiny wolf collapses back onto the pillows, his stomach growling loudly for food. Despite the gravity of the situation, Ajian can't help but find the little cub's plight incredibly endearing. He moves to the side of the bed, preparing himself for the long and demanding workday ahead. He carefully straightens his professional attire, ensuring his uniform is perfectly set for the office. He provides a generous portion of food, which the hungry cub begins to devour with wild enthusiasm. Ajian watches from the floor, fascinated by the beastman's ability to undergo such a complete physical transformation. He wonders if the extreme physical strain of the recent crisis is what forced Kanyuo into this vulnerable state. Once the meal is finished, Ajian tenderly wipes the cub's face to keep him clean and comfortable. The little wolf stares back with intense blue eyes, insisting that this embarrassing condition is only temporary. Ajian offers a warm, reassuring smile, joking that his new size certainly makes him easier to look after in the apartment. Offended by the tease, the tiny cub stomps his paws in a miniature fit of furry rage. He lets out a fierce but mostly cute protest, clearly hating how weak he feels in this diminutive form. Ajian checks his phone one last time, instructing the cub to stay hidden and rest throughout the day. He hands over a spare smartphone, ensuring they have a way to stay in contact if an emergency arises while he is away. Arriving at the office, Ajian is immediately cornered by coworkers, asking about Kanyuo's sudden and unexplained absence. He maintains a calm, professional demeanor, explaining that his assistant is currently out on medical leave. The sheer volume of pending inspection reports weighing on the department leaves Ajian feeling completely overwhelmed. A heated argument breaks out nearby as different departments fight over who Kanyuo actually reports to. The bickering intensifies, with the staff finally realizing how valuable Kanyuo's efficiency has become to the entire firm. The coworkers continue to shout over one another, completely ignoring Ajian's attempts to maintain order. Exhausted by the corporate drama, Ajian walks away, needing a moment of silence to clear his head. His phone suddenly vibrates in his hand, showing an incoming video call from the spare device he left at home. He quickly taps the screen to answer, curious to see why the little cub is calling him so early. On the screen, the tiny wolf waves a single paw at the camera, looking perfectly content and safe. Ajian's face lights up with a genuine blush, his stress melting away at the sight of his adorable companion. Kanyuo stares intently into the camera, his wide blue eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and longing. At the office, Ajian looks down at his vibrating phone, his expression shifting from confusion to mild surprise. The screen reveals a chaotic view of the floor, where a tiny black tail swishes with excitement. Suddenly, the cub lunges forward, determinedly snatching up a snack from his bowl. He looks back at the camera with a proud tilt of his head, showcasing the sausage firmly gripped in his jaws. Ajian can't help but let out a soft, relieved smile, glad to see his little companion finally eating. On the other side of the line, Kanyuo pauses, mesmerized by the gentle expression on his caretaker's face. He realizes this is a rare, tender side of Ajian that he's never had the chance to see before. A curious thought crosses his mind. He wonders if Ajian enjoys eating these sausages just as much as he does. Lost in the moment, Ajian leans his head against his hand, completely captivated by the adorable scene on his screen. He reaches out a finger to trace the screen, wishing he could reach through the glass to offer a gentle pat. His peace is shattered when a coworker looms over his shoulder, curious about what has him looking so uncharacteristically happy. Panicking, Ajian frantically tries to hide his phone, his face flushing as he tries to maintain his professional composure. She teases him relentlessly, finding the contrast between his cold reputation and his love for cute animals absolutely precious. Back at the apartment, Kanyuo's tiny paws scramble against the floor as he prepares to make a daring move. He leaps repeatedly toward the door handle, but his current stature makes the simple task feel like climbing a mountain. He eventually flops onto the rug, panting heavily as the physical toll of his regression begins to set in. Despite his exhaustion, he forces himself back up, driven by the singular goal of greeting Aegean the moment he returns. He gazes up at the window, realizing that the world looks much more intimidating from this low perspective. With a burst of newfound energy, he launches himself toward the light filtering through the blinds. His small claws scrape against the ledge, barely gaining enough purchase to keep him from falling back down. He finally hauls himself up, staring out at the sunset with an expression of pure determination. He presses his paw against the glass, straining every muscle in his small body to push the window open. His brow furrows in concentration as he struggles to reclaim even a fraction of his former strength. The vastness of the room highlights just how vulnerable he has become in this fragile state. Memories of a sun-drenched field begin to surface, taking him back to a time of growth and tutelage. A younger Kano stands beside his majestic master, listening intently to the secrets of their lineage. The great wolf explains that his current weakness is merely a result of depleted energy and vital nutrients. With a powerful howl, the master demonstrates the overwhelming presence required to transcend their animal instincts. The cub remembers the grueling training sessions, dragging heavy loads to push his physical limits to the breaking point. To truly walk among humans, he was told he must develop an intellect and perception far beyond any ordinary beast. He recalls the warmth of human hands, a sensation he has yearned for since his very first transformation. The master warns him that forcing a human form without sufficient power will only lead to an embarrassing regression. The sharp sound of a key turning in the lock suddenly pulls him back to the present reality. Aegean steps through the door, calling out for his little friend while balancing a bag of groceries. He drops to one knee immediately, his voice softening as he greets the tiny wolf waiting on the mat. Aegean carefully gathers the cub into his arms, checking to see if he's been behaving while home alone. Kano leans into the embrace, his heart swelling with joy at the immediate affection from the person he cares for most. Aegean gazes warmly at the cub, warning the little one that if he doesn't revert to his true form soon, he'll be missed for a lifetime. A sudden surge of energy begins to swirl around the cub's paws. A mysterious transformation sequence initiates. Kano's adult form towers over the room, delivering a stern warning about the risks of remaining in a weakened state. In a surreal shift, Aegean presents a specialized thermal flask intended to assist with the recovery process. He examines the container with a focused intensity, carefully considering the next step of their routine. Kano reaches out with a steady hand, gently guiding Aegean's attention back to the urgent matter at hand. Aegean's composure falters slightly as he processes the gravity of the situation unfolding before him. He questions Kano's intentions, his voice reflecting a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The atmosphere thickens as they lean in, with Aegean instinctively whispering a soft word of caution. He closes his eyes, completely overwhelmed by the intense sensory experience of the moment. A single, glistening tear highlights the emotional weight of their long-awaited reunion. Suddenly, the vision shatters as Aegean jolts awake, violently spitting out a snack that had been placed in his mouth. He sits up in a daze, clutching the rogue sausage while the cub watches him with wide, innocent eyes. A quick memory flashes through his mind of the cub happily munching on the very same treat earlier. Aegean stares down at the snack, trying to make sense of the bizarre wake-up call he just received. He quickly tries to return the food to the cub, insisting that the little one should be the one eating. The cub simply licks his muzzle, looking quite pleased with himself for sharing his favorite meal. Aegean takes a moment to steady his breathing on the edge of the bed, realizing it was all just a vivid dream. Later, a meticulously prepared breakfast of eggs and sausages sits ready on the table to start their day. The cub dives into his portion, clearly enjoying the nutritious meal Aegean provided for his recovery. As Aegean quietly eats his sandwich, the cub reflects on how incredibly kind and supportive his caretaker has been. They share a peaceful morning together, the silence of the dining room filled with a sense of mutual trust. However, a shadow of doubt crosses the cub's face as he wonders if he'll be cast out once his human form returns. Aegean pauses, his expression softening as he listens to the cub's unspoken anxieties. He sets his food aside, giving his full, undivided attention to the small creature beside him. With a gentle touch, he reassures the cub that his only priority right now should be getting his strength back. Relieved and happy, the cub wags his tail, feeling a deep sense of security in Aegean's presence. He playfully nips at Aegean's hand, a classic sign of Kenyan affection and growing confidence. The cub continues to nibble gently, using this physical connection to express his gratitude and bond. An analytical overlay reveals that this specific behavior is a wolf's way of demonstrating profound loyalty. This instinctual display mirrors the deep-rooted nature of his ancestors, signifying a total acceptance of his wild side. Aegean leans back, offering to buy anything the cub might need to feel more comfortable during his stay. The cub looks up from a digital screen, his curiosity piqued by the world of modern technology. He reacts with sheer shock at the information displayed, his eyes widening at the data on the screen. Driven by a new goal, the cub leaps down from his chair to investigate further. He scurries over to a smartphone, determined to understand the complexities of human finances. His paws tap the screen as he calculates his potential earnings, realizing the road to wealth is long. The sheer magnitude of the financial world leaves the cub feeling like he's drifting through a vast, confusing cosmos. He looks up with a newfound determination, asking how he can possibly earn more to support them. Ajian explains that mastering computer skills could significantly increase his value in the professional world. Inspired, the cub's eyes sparkle with excitement at the prospect of learning a new, high-paying trade. Ajian takes the cub's paw in his hand, ready to begin their first technical training session. He lifts the little one up, preparing to guide him through the basics of digital literacy. The cub nestles against Ajian's shoulder, feeling safe and motivated to start this new chapter. Hidden beneath his cute exterior, a sharp glint in the cub's eye confirms that his power has finally returned to full capacity. The rhythmic clacking of keys fills the room as tiny paws fly across the keyboard. Ajian watches in absolute disbelief, stunned that his little companion has mastered typing speeds this quickly. He can't help but shower the cub with praise, watching the black fur blur as Kano continues his digital onslaught. Gently lifting the wolf cub, Ajian marvels at just how naturally the little guy absorbs new information. With the cub now resting comfortably in his lap, he shifts the lesson toward mastering the computer mouse. He demonstrates the precise movement required to navigate the screen and open programs. Kano stares at the device with unwavering focus, desperate to master every tool Ajian uses. The lesson continues as Ajian explains the specific functions for opening and closing windows on the desktop. Encouragingly, the caretaker steps back to let the cub take control of the workstation. Kano creeps forward, eyeing the mouse like it's a piece of prey he needs to conquer. His eyes narrow with intense concentration as he prepares to make his move. With a burst of determination, he raises a single paw high into the air. He slams his paw down onto the plastic casing with all the might a cub can muster. However, the screen only pops up a right-click menu, proving that the technical nuances are harder than they look. The cub looks down at his own paw, realizing the buttons are much more difficult to distinguish than he expected. Ajian stifles a laugh, finding the cub's earnest struggle to be incredibly endearing. Reaching out, he places his hand over the cub's paw to guide him to the correct side. Together, they perform a perfect double click to successfully launch the application. Seeing Ajian's joyful expression, Kano feels a surge of pride in his small accomplishment. Confident in the cub's progress, Ajian stands up to let him continue practicing his new skills independently. Kano watches him leave, noting that his caretaker seems much happier lately. He vows to master every scary thing inside the computer so he can keep that smile on Ajian's face forever. The scene shifts to the bustling city, where the morning sun glints off a massive corporate office building. Even in the middle of a busy workday, Ajian finds his mind wandering back to the sweet moments at home. A subtle, satisfied smile plays across his lips as he reflects on his life's recent changes. Dressed professionally, he carries an aura of peace that hasn't been seen in a long time. Upon arriving at the office, he is immediately greeted by his colleague, Xiaofang. As they head toward the elevators, Xiaofang mentions that Kano hasn't shown up for work today. She reaches out to brush something off his shoulder, noticing a stray detail on his suit. She remarks on how close Ajian must be to his pet, as the scent of the cub is still clinging to him. Ajian quickly brushes off the remaining fur, explaining that he left the house in a total rush this morning. Suddenly, the elevator doors slide open to reveal the imposing figure of Director Chen. The director stands tall, casting a cold and scrutinizing gaze over the two colleagues. Ajian immediately senses a thick, uncomfortable atmosphere settling between the newcomers. Xiaofang formally introduces Chen as the new business development director who recently joined the firm. She shares a tense, silent look with the director that hints at a complex history. Chen's sharp eyes remain fixed on them, hiding a depth of hidden intentions. He drops a bombshell, suggesting that their connection is far more significant than anyone realizes. Xiaofang casts a sharp, sidelong glance, his eyes filled with the weight of unspoken history. He makes it clear to Director Chen that whatever they once shared is strictly a thing of the past. Chen remains stoic, his icy gaze betraying nothing as he absorbs the cold dismissal. The air in the cramped elevator turns suffocatingly heavy as the trio stands in a tense, silent standoff. Xiaofang reflects on his complicated connections, wondering why his personal life is being scrutinized by those around him. In a dimly lit room, a phone vibrates incessantly against the mattress, cutting through the silence of the night. Tucked away under the thick blankets, the little wolf hybrid remains hidden, ignoring the persistent ringing. A hand finally reaches out to check the screen, only to find the caller has already hung up. Back at the office, Xiaofang questions Ajian about his recent absences and whether he's been feeling well. Ajian can't help but feel the crushing weight of the awkward atmosphere surrounding the conversation. He stares at the elevator display, desperate for the doors to finally open and end the social pressure. The moment he's free, Ajian beats a hasty retreat to focus on his professional duties for the day. Just as Xiaofang attempts to leave, Chen suddenly lunges forward to grip his wrist in a firm, authoritative hold. Xiaofang freezes, his eyes widening in total shock at the director's bold physical intervention. Chen pulls him into a tight, professional confrontation, demanding he stay for a serious discussion. Xiaofang struggles against the constraint, his breath hitching as he tries to break the director's iron grip. The metal doors slide shut, sealing the two men inside to settle their unresolved business in private. As the sun sets over the city, the little wolf keeps a watchful eye on the horizon from his high-rise perch. Ajian eventually trudges through the front door, looking completely drained from the day's corporate drama. He expects a chaotic, furry greeting, but his little companion is nowhere to be seen in the hallway. Confused, he looks at the empty floor where the hybrid usually waits for his return. A rapid, rhythmic clicking sound draws his attention toward the light spilling from the study. He finds the wolf hybrid perched on the chair, completely absorbed in the computer screen. The small paws fly across the keys with the mechanical precision of a master typist. Jian reaches out to see what's happening, noticing a frantic livestream chat scrolling by on the monitor. He checks his own phone in disbelief, stunned to realize the wolf has accidentally gone viral. With a final flourish, the wolf completes a massive typing session, shattering all beginner speed records. Jian stands behind him in total shock, trying to process the digital chaos his pet has created. He holds up his phone, demanding an explanation for the live stream and the mountain of virtual reward money. The wolf looks back innocently, explaining he just wanted to buy a gift and stumbled into the rewards program. Jian reviews the data, marveling at the thousands of characters the hybrid has mastered in a single afternoon. He realizes the wolf's technical speed is already on par with a professional customer service agent. The hybrid tilts his head, wondering if these digital numbers can actually be used for a real shopping spree. Jian confirms the shocking truth: the wolf has somehow earned 20,000 yuan through his efforts. The wolf shifts his weight on the desk, his mind racing as he processes his newfound wealth. Suddenly, a strange, pulsing tingle washes over him, signaling an imminent physical change. He stares ahead with wide eyes, sensing that his time in this small, cute form is rapidly coming to an end. A wave of anxiety hits him as he wonders if Jian will still look at him with the same warmth once he returns to his human self. The small black wolf cub stands on the desk, looking up with wide, curious eyes as he senses a change coming. Jian reaches down and gently scoops the tiny creature into his arms, wondering what's wrong. Suddenly, a bright light envelops them both as the cub begins a startling physical transformation. In a flash of magical energy, Kano reverts to his human form, catching Jian completely off guard with the sudden shift in weight. Kano looks up with a dazed expression, realizing the transformation happened much faster than he expected. Jian quickly stands up and adjusts his clothing, trying to maintain his professional composure after the chaotic moment. Kano looks down sadly, worried that his inability to control his powers has disappointed his caretaker. Jian kneels down to meet him at eye level, asking why on earth he's apologizing for something so natural. A soft, genuine smile spreads across Jian's face as he looks at his companion with newfound warmth. Kano stares back, mesmerized by the rare sight of Jian's kind expression. Jian chuckles softly, admitting that he actually finds Kano's current look quite cute. Overjoyed by the compliment, the two celebrate in a burst of happiness as Kano realizes he is truly accepted. Kano beams with pure excitement, vowing to work even harder to earn Jian's full approval. Jian's eyes widen in surprise at the sheer intensity of the young man's enthusiasm. He quickly looks away, telling Kano to go put some clothes on immediately to maintain their household standards. Later, a fully dressed Kano diligently practices using chopsticks while enjoying a prepared meal. The two sit together at the dinner table, reflecting on how quickly Kano is adapting to the complexities of human society. Kano finishes his meal with a satisfied grin, proudly showing off his empty tray. Seeing a bit of food left on the corner of Kano's mouth, Jian reaches out to help him clean up. He gently brushes the stray crumb away with his thumb, focused on the task at hand. Reverting to his animal instincts, Kano playfully licks Jian's hand before he can pull it back. Jian recoils in shock, momentarily forgetting that Kano still possesses many wolf-like habits. Kano then excitedly announces his next big goal. He wants to buy a diamond ring with his hard-earned money. Jian blinks in confusion, wondering why a former wolf would be interested in such a specific human luxury. The tiny chibi Kano scrolls through his phone, determined to find the perfect item to show his friend. He presents the screen, displaying a pair of elegant, sparkling rings he found online. Jian takes the phone, realizing this is the true motivation behind Kano's recent viral streaming efforts. Kano declares with a bright, hopeful smile that he wants to participate in human traditions like marriage. He imagines a grand wedding ceremony, envisioning a future where he can fully integrate into the human world. Kano pushes his hard-earned savings across the table, insisting that Jian take the money for his own use. Jian crosses his arms and turns away, lecturing the wolf boy that while humans can live without partners, survival in their society is impossible without financial stability. Kano stares back with a gaze of pure, unyielding determination. Jian sighs, recalling that he managed to live perfectly fine on his own before they ever met. Suddenly, Kano reaches across the table and firmly grasps Jian's hands to stop him from pulling away. With an intense expression, Kano vows to continue earning even more, so he can provide a better life for his caretaker. Jian freezes, his eyes wide as he processes the weight of the younger man's promise. He gently pulls his hands back, questioning why Kano marked him years ago only to disappear without a word. Kano reaches out again, explaining that he spent a decade tirelessly learning how to transform and speak just to be by Jian's side. He looks down in shame, admitting he needed those years to master his self-control so he would never accidentally hurt Ajian again. Looking around their quiet dining space, Kanuo reveals his goal was always to become strong and smart enough to offer true protection. Ajian listens in silence, his profile softening as the truth behind the long absence finally comes to light. He closes his eyes for a moment, reflecting on the sheer dedication required for a beastkin to integrate so thoroughly. Kanuo watches him intently, his face filled with a desperate hope for understanding. Ajian offers a gentle smile, telling Kanuo that he has already learned enough and is no longer responsible for his well-being. Refusing to back down, Kanuo nuzzles against Ajian's arm and insists that forming a permanent bond is his only wish. Ajian considers the gravity of such a ritual, represented by the solemn and unbreakable nature of a traditional wedding. He knows that for beast folk, this bond is a life-or-death commitment that cannot be severed by any outside force. The consequences of breaking such a sacred pact are dire, often leaving behind nothing but grief and a cold, lifeless void. This heavy cultural tradition hangs over them like a dramatic, inescapable shadow. Ajian stands up abruptly, telling Kanuo to seek out someone else if he is truly set on such a dangerous ritual. Kanuo lunges forward to grab Ajian's wrist, shouting that if a bond is too much, he is more than willing to settle for a human marriage. Ajian tries to make an exit. The persistent wolf boy clings to his leg with all his might. Kanuo gets dragged across the floor like a stubborn weight, ignoring Ajian's reminders that the company has already provided separate housing. Large, tearful eyes well up as Kanuo asks if he is being driven away because Ajian secretly hates him. Ajian stops in his tracks, looking down at the pitiful sight of the boy refusing to let go of his ankle. Kanuo buries his face against Ajian's leg, claiming he refuses to live anywhere else because of the unnecessary costs. Ajian can only shake his head at how quickly Kanuo has adopted a human-like obsession with saving money. His expression shifts to one of genuine curiosity as a more technical question about Kanuo's biology comes to mind. Leaning back down, Ajian asks how Kanuo managed to handle his volatile biological cycles during his 10 years of isolation. Kanuo's gaze flickers downward, the memory of those difficult times clearly weighing on him. He explains that he would find the most isolated spots in the wilderness and physically exhaust himself until the cycle finally broke. Kanuo leans his head against Ajian's chest, vowing that he will endure any amount of pain just to ensure he never has to leave Ajian's side again. Ajian watches Kanuo sleep peacefully, realizing the wolfkin possesses far more basic knowledge and intuition than a typical human. He notes how Kanuo works twice as hard as anyone else to restrain his wild instincts just to blend in and stay by his side. Reaching out with a gentle touch, Ajian decides that this quiet sincerity is exactly why he can't bring himself to dislike the boy. He softly strokes Kanuo's hair, acknowledging the deep bond forming between them as his companion rests in his lap. Even as he questions the logic of their complicated situation, Ajian remains anchored by Kanuo's comforting presence on the floor. He wonders aloud if beastkin fur stops growing at a certain length, much like a human's hair would after reaching a specific stage. Technical diagrams illustrate the resting phase of hair follicles, highlighting the biological similarities they now share in this integrated society. Ajian observes how much more fluently Kanuo speaks lately, truly becoming indistinguishable from a human in every way. The next day at the office, Kanuo proves his dedication by lugging a massive stack of paperwork through the halls for his team. Team leader Zhang greets him warmly, impressed that Kanuo is already back at his station and ready to tackle urgent tasks. Meanwhile, Ajian focuses his sharp gaze on the complex medical data filling his computer screen, determined to stay productive. He sighs at the lack of detailed explanations from the research department regarding the effects of new medical ingredients. With a mountain of inspection reports to write, his fingers fly across the keyboard in a frantic race against the clock. Kanuo suddenly appears with another towering pile of documents, prompting a surprised Ajian to check if he's overworking himself. Ajian strictly advises his partner to slow down and take the heavy loads one step at a time to avoid injury. Kanuo beams with pride as he pulls out his phone, claiming he finally knows how to order delivery for their office dinner. Ajian leans in to see what his companion has selected, curious about his progress with mastering human technology. His eyes widen in total shock when he sees the astronomical price Kanuo was about to spend on a single meal. Acting quickly, Ajian snatches the phone away to prevent a financial disaster and save their hard-earned money. They eventually settle for a more modest meal, neatly lifting the food with their chopsticks to fuel up for the night. The two share a quiet moment of professional camaraderie while eating at their desks during the late-night shift. After finishing his meal, Kanuo immediately grabs the next set of papers to maintain his high level of efficiency. He dashes off toward the storage room, determined to prove his worth as a capable and reliable assistant. Ajian watches him go with a small smile, planning a supermarket trip to teach Kanuo how to navigate human stores properly. The peaceful office atmosphere is broken when Xiaofang approaches the desk with a notably serious expression. He delivers the news that Director Ling has returned and is requesting Ajian's presence in his office immediately. Ajian follows him down the hall, mentally preparing for whatever professional update the director has in store for him. Stepping into the room, he finds himself facing a group of stern men in suits, raising the tension of the meeting instantly. Outside the office, Kanuo's expression hardens as he senses a shift in the air, his protective instincts on high alert for Ajian's safety. Ajian enters the office, his first thought being the director's physical well-being. Ling sits amidst a mountain of paperwork, admitting that his latest prescriptions are causing him a great deal of distress. The director hands over a file, explaining that the laboratory has provided further details regarding the new additives. Ajian accepts the report, maintaining a strictly professional demeanor as he prepares to review the data. He listens intently, his expression remaining neutral and focused on the task at hand. Ling watches him closely, his gaze sharp and unreadable. Reaching out, Ling checks Ajian's temperature to ensure his colleague hasn't fallen ill as well. Ajian meets his gaze steadily, showing no signs of the fever Ling suspected. Ling pulls his hand back, confirming he has already taken his own medicine to manage his symptoms. Ajian looks away, lost in thought as he reflects on their complicated history. He admits to himself that despite their years of history, a strange distance has always remained between them. A flashback to 3rd grade shows a young, energetic Ling dominating the badminton court. In contrast, the young Ajian stood on the sidelines, isolated and without any friends to play with. Ling was the one to break the ice, offering a bright smile and an invitation to join the game. Touched by the kindness, Ajian quickly agreed, marking the start of their long-term association. They spent their afternoons on the court, with Ling always looking out for his quieter companion. Ajian poured his heart into the matches, finally finding a sense of belonging in the sport. As they grew older, Ajian supported Ling through frequent bouts of a mysterious, recurring illness. Despite their closeness, Ling's family remained highly private, often turning Ajian away at the front gate. Over time, a series of unspoken rules and emotional barriers began to divide the two friends. Years later, Ling suddenly claimed they had been in a relationship for an entire year, catching Ajian off guard. Confused by his own memory loss, Ajian tried his best to accept this new professional and personal dynamic. Back in the present, Ajian suggests that they would be much better off as ordinary friends or simple colleagues. Ling looks visibly shaken, the rejection clearly hitting him harder than expected. He grabs Ajian by the shoulders, demanding to know why he is suddenly trying to distance himself. Ajian remains firm, explaining that he simply cannot find any feelings beyond basic friendship. Ling's jaw tightens as he struggles to process the researcher's blunt honesty. Suddenly, Ling's eyes glow with a startling, unnatural red intensity as he questions Ajian's lack of emotion. Ajian pauses, his senses picking up a strange, lingering scent of perfume in the office air. Ling shifts his grip to Ajian's chin, his gaze becoming dangerously focused. Startled by the sudden change in the director's behavior, Ajian watches him warily. The intensity in the room spikes as Ling looms closer, his eyes locked to Ajian's. Ajian remains remarkably calm, carefully observing the director's erratic physical reactions. The atmosphere grows heavy as Ling leans in, his professional mask completely slipping away. Holding Ajian in a firm grip, the director stares into his eyes, searching for a spark of the connection they once shared. Ajian's eyes flutter open as he regains consciousness, his mind slowly clearing from the confusing haze. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Ajian shoves the director away to create much-needed distance between them. The office door is kicked open as Kano storms inside, catching the tense confrontation mid-air. Boiling with protective rage, Kano struggles against the security detail trying to restrain him from reaching Ajian. Ajian quickly steps in to de-escalate the situation, urgently whispering for Kano to suppress his aggressive scent. Director Ling's gaze turns ice-cold as he demands to know who authorized this blatant intrusion into his office. Confused by the sudden rescue, Ajian looks at his protector and questions why he risked coming here. The guards sheepishly explain to their boss that they were simply unable to halt Kano's determined advance. Firmly standing by the wolf hybrid, Ajian insists that Kano wouldn't have broken in without a valid reason. Ajian casts a suspicious look at Ling, realizing the director used a hidden method to make him temporarily lose consciousness. The tipped-over lamp serves as a grim reminder of the physical struggle that just took place. Turning his back on their shared past, Ajian officially declares that he will absolutely not continue any relationship with Ling. The weight of the rejection hits Ling like a physical blow, leaving him momentarily speechless. His composure finally cracks, a look of desperate frustration flitting across the director's face. Ling can only stare in silence, the reality of the situation finally sinking into his mind. Ajian maintains a professional tone, stating he will compensate the company for the broken door before walking away. He takes Kano firmly by the arm, leading the hybrid away from the toxic environment. The office falls into an eerie silence as the two walk out, leaving Ling isolated in the center of the room. Alone with his thoughts, Ling's eyes well up with confusion as he wonders how things spiraled so far out of control. Suddenly, a violent fit of coughing seizes his body, forcing him to cover his mouth in pain. He pulls his hand away only to find it stained with a terrifying amount of fresh blood. The guards rush back in, panicked by the sight of their director's rapidly deteriorating health. Ling's eyes flare with demonic red light as he snarls at them to get out and leave him alone. Terrified by the director's supernatural aura, the security team retreats back into the hallway. His strength failing, Ling grips the edge of the mahogany desk just to stay upright. He curses his timing, his body buckling under the pressure of a transformation he can no longer hold back. With trembling fingers, he fumbles through his desk drawer hour in a desperate search for his medication. He clutches at his chest, his heart racing as the internal agony becomes unbearable. Disaster strikes when the bottle of life-saving pills slips from his grasp and clatters to the floor. Ling's face contorts in pain, his eyes glowing brighter as the primal forces within him take over. His grip finally fails, and he slips into the darkness beneath the desk as his consciousness fades. The office remains still, with no sign of the man who was standing there just moments ago. Curled up in the shadows is a small, vulnerable fox hybrid, its only remaining thought being the need to find a Jian. The city's skyline glows under a setting sun as the workday finally comes to a close. Walking home, Kano stares at his phone in disbelief, realizing his accounts have been completely drained. He looks down with a heavy heart, clearly burdened by his sudden financial instability. However, his mood shifts instantly as he celebrates the fact that he's finally free to buy Jian's side. Jian watches him with a soft, appreciative gaze, finding comfort in their new dynamic. Deep down, he reflects on the fact that he had planned to end things with the director regardless of today's chaos. The two reach the apartment elevator, though Kano seems distracted by an urgent notification. His expression turns serious as he double-checks the message on his screen. He explains to Jian that there is a major issue with his identity papers that could delay his pay for weeks. While Jian suggests waiting until morning, Kano insists the HR department needs it resolved immediately. He gives Jian's hand a reassuring squeeze, promising to return as soon as the paperwork is filed. Jian heads inside alone, wondering if the team leader's attempt to help Kano's registration has backfired. He pauses at his door to send a quick text, hoping to clear up the confusion regarding the missing documents. With a heavy sigh, he tries to shake off his anxiety, wishing for a peaceful night ahead. Meanwhile, outside in the shadows of the garden, a wild fox watches his every move before creeping closer. Back in the kitchen, Jian opens his fridge, which is now stocked with fresh ingredients for a proper meal. He feels a sense of purpose as he prepares to cook for two, happy that his efforts won't go to waste. Standing in the quiet apartment, he finally enjoys a rare moment of absolute tranquility. His mind drifts back to the harsh words he gave the director, acknowledging that the official breakup must have been a painful blow. He looks at his own hands, feeling as though a massive weight has finally been lifted from his shoulders. A sudden, sharp knock at the door breaks the silence and catches him off guard. Thinking Kano has returned earlier than expected, he makes his way to the entryway. He reaches for the handle and locks the door, ready to welcome his friend back. The moment the door cracks open, a ginger blur streaks past him and into the hallway. Jian spins around in shock, staring at the unexpected animal that has just invaded his home. The fox stands its ground in the middle of the room, observing him with an unnervingly intelligent gaze. While Jian is stunned, the fox's glowing eyes reveal a hidden, possessive will that refuses to let the relationship end. Confused by the surreal situation, Jian wonders aloud how a fox could have ended up in a high-rise apartment. He slowly crouches down to the animal's level, assuming it must be a neighbor's lost pet. The fox remains eerily still as Jian reaches out, its intense stare fixed directly on him. He gently pets the creature's fur, puzzled by why it isn't showing any typical signs of fear. Jian pulls out his phone to snap a picture, intending to post it in the building's group chat to find the owner. Sensing the camera, the fox suddenly bolts away, disappearing into the corners of the living room. He stands up to follow, calling out to the skittish animal to keep it from hiding further. He takes a cautious step forward, promising the creature that he'll put his phone away. Jian offers a gentle, reassuring smile, trying his best to win over the mysterious new house guest. Jian peers curiously from around the corner of the room. His eyes widen as he spots the little creature hiding near the furniture. He kneels down on the floor, trying to coax the wary fox out of its hiding spot. The fox narrows its eyes, clearly annoyed by the unwanted attention. Jian checks his phone, momentarily distracted from his fluffy guest. He settles onto the floor and promises the fox that he won't take any more photos. Leaning in close, Jian catches a scent lingering on the fox's fur. He realizes the fragrance is identical to the professional perfume used in his office. The fox freezes, looking away as if hoping to avoid further scrutiny. Jian chuckles, noting that the fox's stubborn personality is strangely familiar. He rests his hand on the cushion, reflecting on someone who also preferred silence over answers. Pulling his knees to his chest, he admits there are many things he still doesn't understand about his past. He recalls his school days, where a certain friend was always the picture of perfection. However, his own special constitution often led to unwanted and uncomfortable attention from others. During those difficult times, his friend was the only one who stepped in to provide a professional sense of security. They would walk together after class, yet his protector always kept a strict, respectful distance. Even when walking side by side, their hands never brushed, maintaining a clear boundary. Jian watched as his friend walked ahead, always ensuring there was no room for suspicion. It felt as though even the closest of friends had to remain on guard at all times. When Jian asked to walk all the way home together, the atmosphere turned heavy. His friend offered a kind but firm smile while declining the request. Realizing the limit had been reached, Jian quickly backed down to keep the peace. The memories blur as he recalls the cold intensity of medical treatments. He remembers sitting through electroshock therapy intended to correct his mental state and erase bad memories. As an adult, his recollections of that time have become fragmented and few. He vividly remembers the guilt of watching his friend leave in a luxury car, feeling a growing distance between them. Until his mind is stable, he vows not to let himself get caught up in complicated emotions. Back in the present, Ajian's hand drifts toward the fox, seeking comfort in its presence. The fox is caught completely off guard by the sudden contact. Without warning, Ajian scoops the small animal up and settles it into his lap. The fox's eyes go wide as it realizes it's been trapped by a hug. Ajian closes his eyes with a gentle smile, genuinely appreciating the soft texture of the fur. He begins to stroke the fox's back with a calm, rhythmic motion. His fingers gently comb through the thick, orange coat. The repetitive motion is soothing for both the researcher and his silent guests. Suddenly, the sound of the front door being unlocked echoes through the apartment. The electronic lock beeps, signaling that someone has arrived. Ajian looks up, his peaceful moment interrupted by his roommate's return. He tells the fox to stay calm, explaining that his roommate is finally home. The fox glares toward the entrance, fuming that the wolf hybrid has returned so soon. Ajian steps into the room, unaware of the territorial tension brewing between his two animal guests. Suddenly, the small black pup leaps into the air, startling Ajian with its frantic, protective energy. The little wolf immediately begins scouring the floor, hunting for the scent of an intruder. Ajian watches with a puzzled expression, trying to understand what has the pup so worked up. The pup presses its nose against the mat, determined to track down the rival's trail. Every inch of the rug is inspected by the tiny, twitching nose of the suspicious wolf. His instincts flare as he identifies the unmistakable scent of a competitor lingering in the air. Ajian comments on the pup's impressive tracking skills as they move further into the living area. Meanwhile, the fox sits regally on the couch, exuding a calm that masks its true intentions. Ajian realizes the scent on the fox is identical to the one he encountered earlier that day at work. Sensing the competition, the pup's shadow looms large as its primal wolf instincts begin to surface. The fox remains unfazed, watching the internal struggle of the young wolf with a sharp, calculating eye. Ajian reaches out to steady the situation, his hand brushing against the thick fur of his companion. He scoops up the small pup, trying to calm the tiny creature's growing agitation. Despite its cuddly appearance, the pup's eyes are locked onto the fox in a silent, jealous challenge. Ajian tries to rationalize the situation, suggesting the matching scents might just be a common fragrance. In the background, the fox watches the interaction with a subtle, knowing glance. Ajian kneels down to mediate between the two animals, hoping to keep the peace in his home. The pup throws a dramatic tantrum, rolling across the floor to demand Ajian's full attention. Disgusted by the display, the fox looks away, judging the wolf for its total lack of dignity. Ajian gently reassures the pup, promising that the fox isn't a threat to their safety. The fox gives a sidelong glance, perhaps feeling a bit guilty for causing such a stir. It lowers its head slightly, maintaining its composed and mysterious aura. Breaking its stoic facade, the fox lets out a soft, endearing sound to bridge the gap. Ajian wonders if the fox is simply hungry or needs to be let outside for a moment. The fox turns away, its ears twitching as if it's embarrassed by the mundane suggestion. Ajian decides it's time to take the fox out and help it find its way back to its owner. The wolf pup watches in disbelief, feeling as though its warnings are being completely ignored. Ajian pulls out his phone to snap a quick photo of the fox for a lost pet post. The fox's tail fluffs up as it prepares for its next move, sensing the change in the atmosphere. Perched on the balcony railing, the fox looks out at the moonlit trees, ready to depart. Ajian finds himself captivated by the fox's gaze, feeling a deep, unexplainable sense of familiarity. Without warning, the sleek animal leaps from the railing and disappears into the night. Ajian leans over the edge, startled by the sudden and agile escape of his guest. He watches the empty garden below, realizing the mysterious fox has truly vanished. From the shadows of the forest, the fox looks back, resolving to return in its human form to claim what it wants. Ajian stands alone on the balcony, while the large black wolf closes in behind him, eager to reclaim his territory. Kano's massive paws clumsily tug at the researcher's clothes as his instincts take over. The wolf leans in close, aggressively sniffing Ajian's neck for any trace of the rival fox. Ajian struggles to maintain his composure while being pinned down by the heavy, ticklish beast. Kano's eyes glow a menacing crimson as he growls about the lingering scent of another predator on his human. Ajian sternly reprimands the massive wolf for his reckless and overbearing behavior after the creature nearly chokes. Feeling rejected, a tearful Kano whines about the fox's scent that was previously clinging to Ajian. Ajian's expression softens as he looks down at his overly dramatic and territorial companion. He reaches out a steady hand to gently pat the wolf's snout to calm him down. Ajian leans in to reassure the wolf that his own scent is now the only one present. Kano freezes in total shock, his pupils dilating at the sudden, close-range proximity. The researcher maintains a calm, focused gaze while bridging the gap between them. He holds the wolf's head firmly, ensuring the message of loyalty is fully understood. Kano is left in a daze of pure joy, floating on clouds of happiness as Ajian heads off for a shower. The wolf dances around in a celebratory frenzy, completely overwhelmed by the researcher's rare show of affection. Even in his human form, Kano's clingy nature in the bathroom quickly earns him a sharp scolding from a frustrated Ajian. Without hesitation, Ajian tosses the persistent wolf right out of the room to reclaim his privacy. Meanwhile, across the city, the elevator display ticks upward as a new confrontation begins. Director Ling checks his messages, looking exhausted after his narrow escape from the apartment. He stumbles down the quiet hallway, his body clearly feeling the physical strain of the night's events. Just as he reaches for safety, Ling prepares to enter his private quarters. A firm hand suddenly clamps down on his, stopping the director dead in his tracks. Ling gasps, spinning around to find an unexpected visitor blocking his path. Yuan Lu stands there with a sharp, professional smile, catching Ling completely off guard. Ling tries to maintain a professional distance, reminding the CFO that their personal ties have been severed for a long time. Yuan Lu ignores the protest, pinning Ling against the wall to discuss their complicated work dynamic. The blonde executive leans in close, testing Ling's resolve with an intense, unwavering stare. Ling's physical state continues to deteriorate, his legs trembling as he struggles to remain standing. He clutches at his own sleeve in a desperate attempt to steady his shaking hands. Recognizing the director's weakness, Yuan Lu takes charge and lifts him up to provide much-needed support. They move toward the secluded parking garage to avoid any prying eyes from the office staff. Surrounded by rows of silent cars, the tension between the two colleagues reaches a boiling point. Yuan Lu leans in close to the shivering director, speaking in a low, authoritative tone about their history. Ling closes his eyes, frustrated by his body's involuntary and weak reaction to the CFO's presence. Yuan Lu tilts Ling's face upward, demanding his full attention for this serious conversation. He confronts Ling about his constant attempts to run away from their professional responsibilities. Ling turns his head away, dismissing his own physical response as a simple, normal physiological reaction. Yuan Lu tightens his grip on Ling's waist, refusing to let the director slip away again. He challenges Ling to look him directly in the eye and repeat his cold denials. Ling's face flushes with a deep, undeniable heat as he finds himself trapped by the executive's gaze. Overwhelmed and unable to argue further, Ling buries his face in the CFO's shoulder to hide his total embarrassment. The dimly lit room sets a somber mood as the night lamp flickers against the quiet furniture. Yuan Lu maintains a forceful grip, refusing to let Ling retreat from this intense physical confrontation. Sensing Ling's immediate exhaustion, Yuan Lu pauses, momentarily questioning if the physical strain of their debate has reached a breaking point. He looks away, his expression hardening as he attempts to mask the guilt of his aggressive tactics. Ling's face flushes from the sheer exertion, his body reacting to the overwhelming pressure of Yuan Lu's presence. A sharp shock registers in Ling's eyes as the physical reality of their complicated history begins to resurface. Yuan Lu focuses his gaze with cold precision, determined to see this grueling encounter through to the end. Ling's vision blurs under the weight of the moment, his senses completely saturated by the intensity of the struggle. When the pressure suddenly lifts, Ling remains motionless, confused by the abrupt silence in the room. In a brief mental shift, Yuan Lu's thoughts drift to a softer, more innocent image, momentarily breaking his stern facade. Ling lies back, completely drained of energy and staring blankly into the distance. Yuan Lu's face falls into shadow, stung by the cold words Ling uses to describe their technical connection. His fingers dig into the fabric beneath him, a silent display of the inner turmoil he's fighting to contain. Ling continues to struggle against his own biological impulses, his skin damp with the effort of maintaining control. He grits his teeth, loathing the way his base instincts seem to override his rational mind during these high-stress sessions. The heat radiating between them becomes palpable as they push each other to the absolute limit of their physical endurance. Tears finally break through Ling's composure as he realizes he has lost the battle to keep his emotional distance. Overcome with sudden regret, Yuan Lu breaks down into a small, vulnerable state, his tough exterior crumbling into a frantic apology. Ling looks up with a weary sadness, seeing the raw vulnerability behind the man who was just so assertive. Yuan Lu's eyes well up with tears as he confesses the true, painful motive behind his harsh behavior. Despite the conflict, Ling reaches out, his hand offering a fleeting moment of contact amidst the chaos of their clashing instincts. With a final, heartbreaking admission, Yuan Lu stares ahead, mourning the impossible gap that remains between their two worlds. Deep within the sterile confines of the research facility, the hum of machinery underscores the gravity of their latest project. Ajian peers through his safety goggles at a glowing vial, his mind racing through the data of their most recent trials. He explains to Ling that while most subjects have lost their human intelligence after regressing to beast forms, a few lucky ones have managed to keep their human appearance. His gaze remains sharp and analytical, refusing to let any emotional weight distract him from the cold reality of the data. Carefully organizing the samples, he notes that if these subjects don't show progress soon, they may lose their humanity permanently. He stands tall as a testament to his own research, questioning why the others are struggling when he serves as a successful living example. Ling listens with a gentle expression, though he can't help but worry about the irreversible nature of IQ degeneration in these hybrids. Ajian remains pragmatic, stating that even in the worst-case scenario, the company is prepared to support these individuals for the rest of their lives. He extends a hand, passing a specific medicinal formula to Ling with instructions for Kano's daily dosage. Ling accepts the bottle, his expression clouded with concern over the potential side effects of such a potent drug. He nervously imagines the chaos that would ensue if a regular human accidentally consumed the serum intended for the hybrids. Ajian dismisses the worry with a cold edge, suggesting that if clinical trials are needed, they should start with Yuan Lu. Ling casts his eyes downward, feeling the sting of Ajian's lingering resentment toward the CFO. Ajian's grip tightens on a second bottle, his knuckles whitening as he reflects on the complicated power dynamics at play. He makes it clear that he won't allow Yuan Lu to use Ling as a pawn to maintain control over the research. Turning his back to the lab equipment, Jian reminds Ling that those who betrayed the organization in the past shared the same hollow excuses. He finally pulls off his protective gear, his hands trembling slightly from the unspoken tension of their conversation. Across the building, a firm knock echoes against the door of the executive suite. Kano stands in the hallway, beaming with professional pride as he prepares to deliver a stack of marketing documents. He waits patiently for a response, standing tall in his casual office attire. When silence meets his first attempt, he knocks again, wondering if the president is even at his desk. Getting impatient, the hybrid begins a rapid-fire assault on the door, determined to get his task finished. Inside, Yuan Lu is hunched over his desk in a state of total exhaustion, his head resting on his hand as he battles a mounting headache. He finally looks up with a weary glare, signaling for the intruder to enter before his door is knocked off its hinges. Kano pops his head in, relieved to see that the CFO is actually present and accounted for. Yuan Lu doesn't hide his annoyance, calling out the hybrid's lack of manners for the disruptive entrance. Without a word of thanks, the president snatches the folder and begins flipping through the pages at a dizzying speed. Kano watches in awe, his eyes practically sparkling at the executive's incredible efficiency. Yuan Lu closes the folder with a sharp snap, telling the hybrid to stop with the flattery and move on to the next task. Kano takes the documents back, but his expression suddenly shifts as he catches a specific scent in the air. He leans in close, sniffing the edge of the folder with the keen instinct of a wolf. A wide grin spreads across his face as he realizes the president carries the distinct scent of their team leader, Ling. Yuan Lu freezes, his face flushing a bright crimson, as his professional composure completely evaporates. The heat rises all the way to his ears, mortified that his private interactions are being sniffed out by the staff. Losing his temper, the president literally boots the hybrid out of the office, shouting for him to get out immediately. Kano ends up sprawled on the hallway floor, rubbing his head and wondering why a simple observation caused such a meltdown. Ling happens to be passing by and stops in his tracks, looking down at his friend with a confused expression. Kano immediately bounces back to his feet, nuzzling into Ling's shoulder with his usual high-energy affection. Ling is caught off guard by the sudden physical contact, his face turning a light shade of pink as he tries to maintain his balance. Kano quickly explains that the president is in a foul mood and offers to handle the document delivery himself. Ling tilts his head, puzzled by Kano's claim that he could smell Ling's pheromones on the boss. Kano just laughs it off, reminding him that in this company, almost everyone besides the top executives is a beastman with a heightened sense of smell. Ling is stunned by the realization that beastmen might be everywhere around him. He tries to rationalize the statistical impossibility of so many hybrids hiding in plain sight within human society. Director Ruan interrupts the hushed conversation, demanding to know exactly what the two of them are whispering about. Kano stands his ground, his sharp gaze meeting Ruan's icy stare head-on in a silent challenge. Panicked, Ling quickly steps in to play peacemaker, offering a nervous apology for his friend's supposedly joking behavior. Ruan's gaze remains sharp and analytical, clearly not buying the easy excuse Ling is selling. The tension spikes as Ling physically holds Kano back, while Ruan insists on hearing the truth directly from the source. Kano reluctantly pulls his hand away, the air thick with the weight of unspoken secrets. Ling looks at his companion with a mix of worry and a silent, desperate plea for discretion. The two exchange frantic, silent signals, desperate to keep cover intact under the director's scrutiny. Ruan cuts through the noise, questioning if Kano's heightened senses are proof that he is a beastman himself. While Kano stays frozen in silence, Ling frantically signals to the director that there is absolutely nothing to see here. Ruan closes the distance, looming over Kano to demand why he suddenly lost his voice and his courage. Kano's mind races as he detects the unmistakable scent of another hybrid's pheromones clinging heavily to the director's suit. To stop a confession before it starts, Ling delivers a sharp, calculated stomp to Kano's foot. Kano doubles over in agony as Ling improvises a sudden, severe stomach ache as a convenient excuse for the outburst. Maintaining his professional composure, Ling informs the director that he needs to take Kano for immediate medical attention and medicine. The pair beats a hasty retreat toward the exit, leaving the director standing alone in the corridor. Ruan watches them go, his suspicion regarding their true nature only growing deeper by the second. He pulls out his phone, determined to find technical data that explains the strange behavior he's witnessing. He pulls up a digital encyclopedia, reading through the complex biological traits and pheromone marking habits of beastmen. Every word on the screen seems to confirm the impossible reality of the situation unfolding in his office. Ruan reflects on past professional encounters where certain associates exhibited unusually restrained and indifferent behavior. Back in the present, he stares at his device, realizing that Kano's sharp instincts might have been dead on. Nearby, a hand discreetly reaches for a small vial, keeping the contents hidden away from prying eyes in a pocket. Tu-En stands calmly in the break room as the two friends scurry past him in the background. Ling's eyes widen as he catches sight of the team leader, a new and unsettling suspicion taking root. He pauses his frantic escape to address the man he's always known only as a professional superior. Tu-En offers a serene, polished smile, casually asking what all the commotion and fighting was about. Ling sticks to his cover story, claiming Kano simply had a bad reaction to some spoiled food and needs water. A chilling thought begins to dawn on Ling as he looks at his coworkers in an entirely new light. He considers the direct connection between two NAGN, realizing the truth has been right in front of him. Surveying the busy office floor, Ling wonders if he's actually the only ordinary human left in the entire building. Morning light filters through the blossoms outside the research facility windows. Ling sits quietly at his desk, focused intently on the technical documents before him. Sudden footsteps approach as a playful bunny keychain bounces against a bag. A cheerful blonde colleague leans in, breaking Ling's concentration with a bright greeting. Ling feels the intrusion of his personal space, wondering why this persistent coworker keeps appearing. He quickly tries to deflect the social invitation, claiming a prior engagement. The blonde man crosses his arms, demanding to know exactly who Ling is meeting. Ling maintains a cool composure, claiming the appointment is with a secret lover. The coworker rejects the claim, insisting his research proves Ling is currently single. Ling realizes his attempts at distance are being met with intense, unwanted scrutiny. Frustrated by the prying, Ling hides his face as the blonde man reacts with dramatic disappointment. The blonde man brings up rumors involving a cousin and two to catch Ling off guard. Ling realizes that if these rumors spread, his carefully maintained reputation will crumble. He leans back, deciding to lean into a false narrative to protect himself. He challenges the young man, asking if he truly wants to join his list of supposed lovers. The blonde man slams his hands on the desk, declaring he wants to be the only one. The tension in the room thickens as they lock eyes across the workspace. For a brief second, Ling is taken aback by the sheer sincerity in the man's gaze. Outside, the wind rustles the leaves as the atmosphere between them shifts. Petals fall across the desk, marking the first time Ling feels genuinely moved by the gesture. Ling's mind drifts to the sterile laboratory where his past remains hidden. He recalls the hybrids treated as mere sacrifices under the guise of scientific doctrine. Tears well up as he remembers his desperate, secret desire to become truly human. That longing only grew stronger after this persistent man entered his life. Back in the office, Ling maintains a professional distance, mindful of the surveillance. He recalls Kenuo's warning about the high number of beastmen hiding in the company. Standing in the break room, the two maintain a strictly professional proximity. A steady hand reaches out to offer a calming, supportive touch. They stand together under the office lights, a moment of quiet solidarity in a dangerous workplace. Ling looks at his colleague, searching for the truth behind his intention. His eyes betray a deep sense of uncertainty regarding their future. In the security room, the guard is too distracted to notice the interaction on the screens. The surveillance footage captures the two standing together, a silent record of their meeting. The blonde man leans close to whisper his plan for a private talk later tonight. He departs with a confident smile, leaving Ling to wonder about his true motives. Despite the persistent pursuit, Ling continues to insist on keeping his boundaries firm. The researcher's story begins in the cold halls of a wealthy merchant family, where strict traditions governed every aspect of life. His childhood innocence was shattered the day a maid brought home a rabbit, not as a pet, but as a meal. Horrified, the young boy pleaded with her to spare the small creature's life. When the rabbit managed to bolt, he didn't hesitate to chase it through the estate's rose gardens. He eventually caught the trembling animal, deciding then and there to raise it in total secrecy. Hiding away in the brush, he whispered promises of safety to his new companion. He bonded deeply with the rabbit, naively believing they would stay together forever. But his father eventually discovered the secret and ruthlessly ended the rabbit's life with a heavy stone. The boy could only stare in paralyzed shock at the sudden, violent loss. Standing over the carnage, his father coldly lectured him that beasts are merely resources meant to be consumed. The man's stern gaze made it clear that no soft emotions would be tolerated in his house. Devastated, the boy collapsed to his knees on the grass. He wept bitterly, haunted by his own perceived weakness and his failure to protect a helpless soul. His grief turned into a hunger strike that landed him in a hospital bed, physically weakened by his internal protests. Realizing he couldn't change his father's nature, he began collecting stuffed toys as a hollow substitute for the real thing. He clung to those plushies, dreaming of a future where he could finally have a rabbit of his own. Years later, while pursuing veterinary studies, he reached out to a small rabbit in a cage, still searching for that lost connection. It was during this time he met Xiao En, a senior student who suggested they try raising one together. However, Xiao En maintained a guarded distance, claiming that forming deep emotional bonds with animals only led to discomfort. When the rabbit nipped at the researcher's finger, it served as a sharp reminder of the unpredictability of living things. The researcher wondered if Xiao En's hesitation stemmed from the tragically short lifespans of such small creatures. Xiao En looked away, stoically suggesting that they should simply focus on providing the best quality of life possible. Unexpectedly, Xiao En then insisted they stop seeing each other entirely to maintain a strictly professional boundary. Left alone in the pet shop, the researcher felt the familiar sting of abandonment. Following that rejection, he finally gave up on the idea of ever owning a pet again. In the present day, he finds himself daydreaming about how adorable it would be if Xiao En were actually a beastman in disguise. Xiao En abruptly snaps him back to reality, ushering him into a private room to settle their dispute. The door clicks shut, sealing them away from the prying eyes of the facility. Xiao En demands to know why he is so fixated on the idea of beastmen existing among them. The researcher admits that while legends are common, the reality of such beings is much harder to grasp. Xiao En's expression darkens as he considers the weight of the researcher's persistent curiosity. The researcher notes that keeping a secret of that magnitude would be an exhausting burden for anyone. He visualizes the immense pressure such a hidden identity would place on a person's shoulders. He reaches out to take Xiao En's hands, trying to offer a sense of understanding and acceptance. Xiao En scoffs, arguing that it's easy to be accepting when you aren't the one facing the danger. The researcher looks him in the eye, swearing that he would accept Xiao En regardless of his biological nature. Xiao En's gaze turns sharp and intense, his patience finally wearing thin. He grabs the researcher by the lapels, asking if he truly understands the biological gravity of a beastman's marking. He explains that during a cycle of heat, a beastman's biology would force them to remain inseparable from their partner. He pulls the researcher closer, emphasizing that this isn't a game, but a permanent physiological bond. Xiao En then issues a stern ultimatum. The researcher must withdraw from the beastman pharmaceutical project immediately. The researcher's hand trembles as he grips his sleeve, the intensity of the moment finally sinking in. Driven by desperation, the researcher shouts that he would even become a beastman himself just to stay by Xiao En's side. Xiao En reacts with a sharp, dismissive gesture, clearly shaken by the reckless declaration. The researcher immediately looks down, his face flushing with embarrassment over his emotional outburst. Xiao En stares at him with a mix of frustration and disbelief, questioning if he even comprehends his own words. Standing in the doorway, the researcher realizes this is the first time he has ever seen Xiao En truly furious. He tentatively reaches out to apologize, sensing that he has crossed a dangerous line. Xiao En pulls back, revealing his sharp, predatory claws as a final, terrifying warning. He delivers the final blow. He has already entered a life-binding contract with another, and attempting a second one would result in his certain death. Ling scrolls through his phone, uncovering the deep history of the Rensheng Corporation. It's more than just a pharmaceutical giant. They specialize in advanced veterinary medicine and beast-human research. Sitting beside Kano, Ling realizes the company is the primary producer of specialized suppressants. He recalls a past encounter where he was offered hormone regulators to manage his symptoms. Back then, he maintained a strictly professional distance, never suspecting the true nature of the hormones involved. Ling turns to Kano, questioning if the team leader knew his secret from the start. He remembers overhearing hushed conversations about bloodlines during a routine photography session. A wave of shock washes over Ling as the pieces finally start to fit together. Kano looks on solemnly, confirming that the leadership is well aware of the hybrids among them. The realization that the entire company might be watching him leaves Ling completely overwhelmed. He stares at his device, feeling like he was lured into a trap designed specifically for his kind. Sensing his partner's distress, Kano leans in to offer a moment of quiet support. Ling gently pets the massive wolf, trying to find a sense of calm amidst the corporate conspiracy. He wonders if the others in the building are just like him, desperate to blend into human society. Looking into the distance, Ling knows he can no longer stay in this environment. He makes a sudden, firm decision and addresses his companion. He asks Kano to take him away from the city to the place where the wolf once lived. Kano's mood shifts instantly to pure excitement at the prospect of visiting his old home. Ling is surprised to hear that the wolf actually has a master waiting for him. Kano beams with pride, explaining that his master is the one who taught him how to navigate the human world. Meanwhile, in the security hub, the monitors track every movement within the facility. The footage shows Boss Ruan moving through the halls, unaware he is being watched. Every interaction in the common areas is logged and time-stamped for review. Jian stands over the security desk, questioning the staff about a recent breach in protocol. The guard highlights a specific incident in the logistics department that could compromise their secrecy. Jian's expression turns icy as he processes the potential threat to their operation. He confirms that the director is still in the office before ending the briefing. He turns his focus toward the hallway, ready to handle the internal leak. Jian encounters a pink-haired colleague and demands an explanation for the security lapse. The colleague looks down, suggesting they simply let the person involved leave the company quietly. Jian refuses to take any risks, maintaining a cold and calculated professional stance. As he tries to walk away, a hand suddenly catches his sleeve to hold him back. The colleague pleads with him, insisting that the individual doesn't know enough to be a threat. Jian's gaze remains sharp and unforgiving as he weighs the consequences. He firmly grips the other's arm, asserting his authority over the situation. He reminds his colleague that their own survival depends on keeping these secrets buried. The physical tension breaks as the colleague finally lets go, acknowledging the grim reality. Left in the dim light of the corridor, the colleague stands in somber silence, resigned to the path ahead. The corporate walls of Rensheng are closing in as Director Ruan and her assistants stand tensely outside the high-security office. Ruan issues a sharp, final warning, demanding that no one speaks a word of nonsense once they cross the threshold. Following closely behind young Xiao and feels a chill of dread realizing that the contracts he signed were likely nothing more than a predatory trap. The heavy doors part to reveal the security head, Jian, who stands waiting with a cold and calculated presence, maintaining a thin veil of professional courtesy. Jian asks after the director's health while his eyes scan for any sign of dissent. Without warning, Jian's eyes ignite with a terrifying crimson glow, signaling the activation of his mental suppression. He floods Xiao An's mind with a command to forget every secret Kano ever whispered to him. The boy's consciousness begins to fracture as his gaze loses all focus under the weight of the psychic assault. His strength fails instantly, and he collapses forward into the assistant's arms as his memories are forcibly rewritten. She holds him tightly, her face etched with worry as she wonders if any strange, new memories were implanted in the void. Slowly, Xiao An's eyes flutter open, though they remain glazed and distant from the shock. He blinks in confusion, wondering why he has suddenly found himself in such a close, protective embrace. Jian moves on as if nothing happened, presenting the next month's drug research and investment plans for review. However, the exertion of the mind wipe takes a visible toll, and Jian suddenly winces, clutching his chest in pain. The assistant's sharp eyes catch the moment of weakness. Realizing something is very wrong with the security head, she notes with internal shock that Jian's oppressive aura has grown significantly weaker in the wake of the attack. Meanwhile, miles away from the city's corruption, a gentle rain begins to fall over the mountain peaks. Kano leads Ling through the misty forest of Mount Tianlang, excitedly announcing that his master's home is finally within reach. Eager to arrive before nightfall, the energetic wolf hybrid sprints ahead while Ling struggles to keep up. Ling watches his companion with a soft expression, reflecting on how Kano never complained once, even after being tricked. He wonders what kind of virtuous mentor could have shaped such a patient and kind-hearted soul. Their footsteps sink into the damp earth as they reach a secluded clearing deep in the woods. Kano calls out with a grin, admitting to Ling that the trek up the mountain was much harder than he remembered. They find themselves standing before a small, weathered shack tucked away from the rest of the world. As Kano shouts for his master, a black and white snout curiously pokes out from the dark doorway. A joyful husky suddenly bounds out of the hut, barking a high-pitched welcome to the travelers. Kano freezes in total shock, staring down at the small dog and asking why his legendary master has shrunk. Despite his confusion, he scoops the husky up and spins him around in a celebratory hug. The husky responds with a flurry of happy licks, clearly recognizing his former student. Ling can only stand by in stunned silence, his mind reeling as he realizes the master is a domestic dog. The husky pants happily, radiating an innocent energy that seems out of place on this mysterious mountain. After the initial shock wears off, Kano kneels in the grass to formally introduce Ling to his mentor. Ling offers a polite greeting to Master Husky, still questioning if this creature is truly a beastman. In a display of refined manners, the husky extends a single paw to greet his new guest. Ling finds the gesture incredibly charming and begins to pet the master, losing himself in the dog's cuteness. When Kano tries to crowd in, Ling playfully pushes him away to maintain a professional focus on the master. They both settle down on the grass, but the husky can only tilt his head when Kano asks him to speak. Kano's face falls as he explains the tragic reality. His master's vocal cords have degenerated, and he can no longer speak the human language. Ling and Kano crouch in the lush mountain garden, picking fresh cabbages while Ling questions why the master's voice has regressed so significantly. Master Husky trots over with a leafy green in his mouth, appearing to act entirely on animal instinct. Kano explains that because his mentor can no longer maintain a human form, he shrank into this permanent state and retreated to the mountains. The dog diligently uses his paws to shred the cabbage leaves into a bowl, preparing a meal with surprising precision. Once finished, the husky carefully nudges the wooden bowl through a small gap in the garden fence. He expertly tips the bowl over, spilling the shredded greens onto the grass for his waiting companions. To Ling's amazement, a group of small chicks rushes forward to feast on the food the husky provided, showing he even taught himself to raise livestock. Ling watches in stunned silence, realizing the master's lifestyle is a far cry from the predatory survival typical of wild animals. Kano gently pets the husky, offering to roast the food for him so he doesn't have to eat it raw. Kano reminisces about his own past instability, recalling the times he and the master shared freshly killed meals together. A small flashback highlights the deep bond they shared when Kano was still learning to navigate his beastman nature. Ling gazes at the dog with a heavy heart, empathizing with the loneliness of a man with human intelligence trapped in a canine body. Kano places a steadying hand on the husky's head, acknowledging the master's silent but profound presence. Ling leans in and softly asks the master if he would be willing to return to the city and live with them. The husky lets out a low grumble and turns away, with Kano translating that he refuses to leave until he can regain his humanity. As they walk through the field, Ling presses for answers about the specific event that stripped the master of his transformation abilities. The husky lets out a mournful howl, which Kano interprets as a warning against a failed experiment by a shady corporation. Kano's expression darkens with worry as he identifies the culprit as the pet human's company. The scene shifts to a quiet bedroom where a blonde man lies in a restless slumber. He suddenly bolts upright, his chest heaving as he is jolted awake by a terrifyingly vivid memory. He clutches his forehead in a daze, wondering why the words from his dream feel so hauntingly familiar. A flashback triggers, showing him formally confronting a man about his secret identity as a beastman. The memory lingers on the intense, unwavering gaze of his companion, confirming the truth he had once forgotten. Back in the present, he looks down at the pink-haired figure sleeping beside him, his heart heavy with newfound suspicion. He recalls being told that a bond had already been formed with another, leaving him to wonder why he was kept around. He watches the sleeper with a look of betrayal, convinced that he has been the victim of a massive deception. He realizes with a pang of hurt that the cruel words used to push him away were likely just a calculated lie. Tears stream down his face as he struggles to understand why he was subjected to such emotional manipulation. The pink-haired individual slowly wakes up, their eyes focusing on the distressed man beside them. They look up in concern, finding the blonde man silhouetted in the dark and visibly shaken. They sit up immediately, reaching out to ask if a nightmare was the cause of his sudden breakdown. He wipes his eyes, haunted by the realization that beastmen possess the terrifying power to erase memories and pretend nothing ever happened. The pink-haired character watches him with a piercing, analytical gaze, questioning if the massive sacrifices he made for a simple connection were truly worth the cost. Jian locks eyes with Xiao An, laying bare the truth about the sacrifice he made for their bond. Xiao and listens in stunned silence, his world tilting as he realizes the sheer weight of everything he had forgotten. While recovering, Xiaoan traces the roots of his chronic pain back to a childhood defined by trauma. A cold city skyline mirrors the rigid, unfeeling commands he was forced to obey without question. Jian remains a steady presence, offering support as they navigate the shadows of the past together. Close inspection reveals the physical scars left by these trials, requiring a focus on long-term medical health. Jian monitors Xiaoan's condition closely, making sure he stays grounded during the difficult discussion. Despite the heavy atmosphere, the two maintain a strictly professional focus on the recovery process at hand. Under a blanket of stars, the crackle of a campfire marks a brief moment of respite for the group. Master Husky's eyes practically glow with excitement as he waits for a taste of the freshly grilled meat. The conversation turns serious as Kano and Ling dive into the dark origins of the Pet Humans Corporation. Master Husky perks up his ears, his instincts sharpening at the mention of his former tormentors. With an intense, knowing gaze, the wolf form mentor prepares to drop a bombshell about the Fox clan. Kano listens with bated breath, realizing the company they once knew was merely a front for something far more sinister. Master Husky warns them through a low growl that the Fox clan possesses the terrifying ability to rewrite memories. Ling is left reeling, struggling to reconcile the idea of such supernatural powers with the world he knows. The mentor explains that the Fox clan uses this power to maintain absolute control over any beastman trying to join human society. A haunting glimpse into the past reveals beastmen as a persecuted minority, hunted through the ages. To survive, they were forced to strip away their identities and vanish into the shadows of human society. Silhouettes of those trying to blend and highlight the desperate, silent struggle for a normal life. The history of violence is stark, shown through the blade of a hunter seeking to drive the beastmen out. The Fox clan's breakthrough came in the form of glowing red eyes, a symbol of their mastery over the mind. But the cost was high. Many failed the experiments and were discarded, forever trapped in animal forms. A pulsating red crystal is revealed, a grim artifact used to reverse time for the elite of the Fox clan. The Ling family stands before a corporate tower as the last remaining line, a legacy built on secrets and sacrifices. Ling's expression turns to one of horror as he connects these dark truths to his own mysterious dreams. Master Husky whimpers softly, mourning the high price his kind must pay for a semblance of dignity. Kano clenches his hands, the unfairness of their expensive and limited survival weighing heavily on him. He stares into the flames, questioning why he was born without the unique gifts of the other clans. Ling looks away, haunted by the chilling thought of who might have actually died in his forgotten dreams. A fragmented memory of a desperate struggle flashes before his eyes, threatening to shatter his composure. Master Husky lets out a wide, weary yawn as the weight of the Fox clan's history settles over the camp. He howls into the night, explaining that every 20 years, a tail must be sacrificed to prolong their dwindling lifespans. Ling turns to Kano, his mind racing as he realizes Aegeon's single tail implies he might be far older than he looks. The sheer scale of the sacrifice leaves Ling reeling, struggling to comprehend a life measured in centuries. Master Husky stretches out by the fire, noting that even the most powerful foxes are bound by these taxing biological costs. A hand reaches for a skewer of fruit, a small moment of normalcy amidst a conversation about immortality and loss. The group sits in a heavy silence, the crackling fire the only sound as they process the dark truth of the Fox clan. Kano stares into the flames, his expression unreadable as he contemplates the hidden burdens his companions carry. Ling leans closer, seeking comfort in the warmth of the fire while the gravity of the revelation sinks in. Ling's face is etched with worry, haunted by the thought of how many times memories might have been rewritten. Later that night, Ling lies awake in his tent, wondering why he saw visions of Kano long before they ever met. He realizes that if the Fox clan can reverse time, his dreams might actually be suppressed remnants of a past life. Sweat beads on his forehead as he grapples with the terrifying possibility that he has lived through these tragedies before. His eyes snap open in the darkness, a sudden instinctual alarm ringing through his mind. He finds himself staring directly into the glowing blue eyes of a massive black wolf looming over him. In a panicked reflex, Ling shoves the beast away, his heart hammering against his ribs. He sits up gasping, clutching his chest as he tries to separate his nightmares from reality. Kano, in his wolf form, tilts his head with an apologetic whimper, sensing Ling's distress. Ling takes a deep, shaky breath, realizing that his friend was only trying to check on him. Looking at the gentle creature, Ling tries to convince himself that Kano could never be the killer from his dreams. He softly tells the wolf to rest, settling back into his sleeping bag to find some peace. The black wolf waits a moment before finding a spot to lie down beside his companion. Kano curls his large body protectively around Ling, offering a silent promise of safety. Ling relaxes into the soft fur, closing his eyes as he finds comfort in the wolf's steady presence. The two drift off into a deep, much-needed sleep, momentarily safe from the corporate shadows. Suddenly, the wolf's demeanor shifts as he lets out a low, menacing growl, baring his sharp fangs. Ling is jolted awake by the aggressive sound, his eyes wide with confusion and rising fear. He peeks out from the safety of his blanket, searching the dark tent for whatever triggered the wolf's rage. Kano quickly reassures him that he only sensed a stray animal nearby, but the damage to Ling's nerves is done. Ling sits up, unable to ignore the biological reality that foxes and wolves are natural enemies in the wild. A grim vision of a wolf hunting a fox flashes through his mind, highlighting the predatory instinct that still exists. He recalls Kano's own admission that his beastly nature hasn't completely faded, even in human form. When the wolf looks at him again, Ling flinches, his mind now clouded by a primal sense of danger. He asks Kano to change back into a human, admitting that he can no longer look at the wolf's beast form without fear. The wolf's eyes fill with a profound sadness, visibly pained by Ling's sudden rejection. Ling grips his arm tightly, filled with guilt, but unable to shake the terrifying image of the predator within his friend. A rooster's crow echoes through the mountains as a new day begins. The campsite remains quiet, with the resident husky and a lone crow watching over the tents. A hand reaches out, cautiously unzipping the tent's entrance. Ling crawls out into the morning light, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. He stops and stares, surprised to see Kano already awake and active. Kano sits nearby, pulling on his shirt while mentioning Master Husky's request for mushrooms. Ling watches the wolf hybrid prepare, questioning the plan to catch birds for breakfast. Kano pauses, promising Ling he won't hunt animals without a good reason. He stands up and tells Ling to head back inside for more rest. With a firm grip, Kano hoists his gear and prepares to set off alone. He walks past Ling with a determined stride, leaving the fox hybrid in silence. Ling lingers behind, wondering if the tension from yesterday still lingers between them. Determined not to stay behind, he reaches for his own jacket to join the excursion. He pulls the fabric close, ready to face whatever the mountain holds. Ling calls out, quickly catching up as the trio heads into the woods. As they hike through the dense forest, Ling asks Kano about his early life with their master. Kano reveals his first memories weren't of the forest, but of wandering the city streets. He recalls a past life where Ling fed him as a pup, even when he bit the hand that helped. He remembers Master Husky saving him by pulling a hunter's arrow from his side. The master then raised the pup, teaching him the ways of the world with simple meals. Eventually, Kano left the master, spending years searching the city for a familiar face. He describes the lonely nights spent on rooftops, waiting for his human form to stabilize. The memory of seeing Ling bullied by humans still fuels a deep, protective fire. In that moment, he vowed to never let anyone harm the one who once fed him. Ling listens, moved by the depth of Kano's loyalty and the hardships he endured. He looks down, reflecting on his own previous fear of Kano's beastly side. They reach a clearing where Kano shows off the mushrooms they've gathered. Kano carefully packs the harvest, ensuring nothing gets damaged. Ling leans in close, touched by how much Kano prioritizes his comfort. Ling offers a warm smile, suggesting they could live on the mountain together permanently. Kano's eyes widen with pure joy, his fangs showing in a rare, genuine grin. He pulls Ling into a celebratory, friendly embrace, eager to start their new life. However, Master Husky watches the emotional display with a skeptical gaze. The bag tips over, spilling the precious mushrooms across the dirt. The master barks loudly, scolding Kano for his sudden clumsiness. In a small chibi moment, Kano explains how he'll earn money for the master's medicine. Master Husky barks back, demanding to know the specifics of the salary. Kano outlines his financial plan, including extra jobs to cover their expenses. Ling watches the exchange, wondering if the master has been influenced by human capitalism. Suddenly, a dark shape cuts through the air with a sharp flap of wings. A crow dives down, landing directly on Kano's neck to snatch a loose thread. The sudden assault sends both Kano and the master into a startled panic. They watch in shock as the bird escapes, leaving the group stunned in the woods. A crow cuts through the misty morning air, tightly clutching a mysterious red string in its beak. Kano reaches down toward the tall grass, intent on investigating the unexpected visitor that just landed. Master Husky lets out a sharp bark, sending the bird spiraling back into the sky as the duo watches it retreat. Ling exhales a breath of relief, observing the empty space where the creature had been just moments ago. His curiosity piqued. Ling gestures to the pendant around Kanyuo's neck and asks if it's an old baby tooth. Kanyuo rests a hand over the charm, explaining he found it because it carries a scent nearly identical to his own. He beams with a toothy grin, hoping this relic from his past might eventually lead him back to his family. The group gathers in the clearing, with Husky and the others taking a moment to survey their serene surroundings. Kanyuo stands firm, recounting the history of how his parents had to navigate the complexities of living among humans. The serious mood breaks when Ling shouts in alarm, catching Master Husky trying to eat something completely unknown. After the chaos, Husky finally finds a patch of soft flowers to settle down for a much-needed nap. Kanyuo sprawls out in the sunlight, sighing contentedly about how perfect the mountain atmosphere feels. Ling leans over his friend, still puzzled why their master wouldn't want to join them permanently. Kanyuo raises a hand to the sky, explaining that the old dog hates the stifling nature of indoor human life. He shields his eyes from the glare, noting that Husky has no interest in the complications of finding a formal partner. Ling joins him on the grass, questioning what technical benefits a beastman bond actually provides in the long run. Kanyuo covers his face with his palm, admitting that the biological marks of their kind are impossible to ignore. He visualizes how a bond acts as a filter, ensuring a beastman's natural pheromones no longer distract those around them. Ling reaches out with a gentle touch, acknowledging the weight of the responsibility Kanyuo is willing to take. Looking up with an innocent gaze, Ling asks if simply avoiding the mark means they can stay as they are. In a brief moment of comedic tension, Kanyuo leans in close as Ling tries to process the mechanics of their connection. Ling's fingers brush against the greenery, his senses heightening as he focuses on the natural world. He places a hand on Kanyuo's chest, feeling the radiating warmth of the wolf hybrid's steady presence. Ling leans in to catch the scent of osmanthus and pine, a fragrance that has become synonymous with safety. The air between them grows still as they maintain a strictly professional focus on the technical details of their bond. Kanyuo's expression remains serious, his gaze locked onto Ling with unwavering devotion. He brings Ling into a supportive embrace, a silent promise to protect him on this journey. Ling finds comfort in the contact, finally allowing himself to relax against his protector's shoulder. Ling closes his eyes, fully surrendering to the peaceful rhythm of the mountain forest. Kanyuo grips Ling's sleeve, ensuring his partner stays grounded during this emotional transition. They hold each other in the quiet clearing, the bond between them growing stronger through this mutual understanding. Kanyuo looks on with a protective fire in his eyes, ready to face whatever challenges come their way. Resting together in the grass, the duo prepares to start their new life far away from the reach of the corporation. Deep in the mountain greenery, Kanyuo and Ling engage in a high-intensity physical training exercise to test their coordination and core strength. Kanyuo focuses his breathing as he checks Ling's vital signs during this strenuous endurance drill. The wolf hybrid monitors the fox's temperature closely to ensure the high-altitude heat isn't causing physical exhaustion. Kanyuo grits his teeth as he pushes through the heavy physical strain of the grappling maneuver. He maintains a strictly professional and focused gaze while managing the intense friction of the mountain conditioning session. Despite the visible exertion, Kanyuo remains vigilant and keeps a sharp eye on his partner's recovery state. Sweat beads on his brow as the wolf hybrid powers through the final, most difficult set of their routine. Kanyuo's tail thrashes with high-energy excitement as they reach the peak of their successful training cycle. Ling looks up with a sense of relief, acknowledging the sheer effectiveness of their collaborative bonding exercise. Gently framing his partner's face, Ling performs a final check for any signs of overexertion after their intense mountain workout. Ling looks up with a dazed expression, his face flushed from the intensity of their physical coordination drills. His fingers graze the grass as he tries to steady his breathing after the exhausting workout. Kanyuo grits his teeth, struggling to maintain his composure, while monitoring the heat generated by their close-quarters training. Ling remains still on the forest floor, wondering why Kanyuo is suddenly holding back his strength. Kanyuo's fist trembles against the ground, a clear sign of the immense physical effort required to suppress his beastman instincts. Ling leans his head against Kanyuo's shoulder, noticing the heavy pressure of his partner's weight. Kanyuo asks if the change in position helps ease the physical strain of the exercise. Meanwhile, far from the mountains, a black crow soars toward a secluded, high-end estate. The bird descends swiftly, landing with precision on a stone window ledge. It waits patiently at the glass, signaling its arrival to the occupant inside. A woman in a formal gown opens the window, asking if the search has finally yielded results. The crow gives a sharp nod, confirming that its reconnaissance mission was a success. She reaches out, her hand ready to receive the evidence the bird has brought back. The crow drops a small, metallic object into her palm, a vital clue to a missing person's scent. The messenger bird bows its head as the woman examines the recovered item. Relief washes over her as she realizes this confirms the target is indeed still alive. Her moment moment of discovery is interrupted as she snaps her head toward a sudden noise at the door. A mysterious figure looms in the doorway, observing her secret exchange with the bird. She quickly hides the evidence and presents a bottle of the new drug developed by the Ling family. Elsewhere, in a medical recovery room, Xiao An and a companion discuss the experimental treatments they've undergone. Xiao An examines a similar vial, questioning the lack of an ingredient list on such a potent formula. Before he can investigate further, the bottle is swiftly snatched from his grasp. His companion warns him sternly never to handle his personal medical supplies without permission. Xiao An looks away, his face clouded with worry over his recent bouts of memory loss. He leans in, admitting that his headaches have become increasingly frequent lately. He gazes at the medicine, wondering if the side effects of their conditioning are starting to take a toll. The companion points to the vial, claiming it is nothing more than a standard nutrient solution for recovery. Xiao An stares blankly, his mind clouded by memory gaps. His companion explains the medicine packaging to ease his confusion. The quiet apartment building stands far from the mountain's secrets. Inside, the living space is filled with books and domestic warmth. Kanuo, in his husky form, barks his approval of the new home. Ling leads his companion through the apartment to settle in. He carefully wipes Kanuo's paws to maintain the clean interior. While the man treats him like a pet, Kanuo internally grumbles about his beastman pride. The group relaxes together on the floor during a peaceful moment. Ling focuses on preparing fresh vegetables for their upcoming meal. Kanuo gives a mental thumbs up, impressed by Ling's care. A playful conversation about family roles leaves the man puzzled. Annoyed by the confusion, the husky disciplines him with a book. Ling blushes while cooking, feeling the awkwardness of the situation. The man offers a bright smile despite the chaotic domestic atmosphere. Outside, the garden and coop remain empty and quiet. The man gathers the remaining greens to avoid wasting resources. He pets Kanuo affectionately, promising to find a way to restore his form. A simple meal of eggs and rice is finally served. The sight of the food makes everyone's eyes sparkle with hunger. Ling serves the plates and encourages the others to eat. The trio enjoys the meal together, finding comfort in the routine. Ling's expression turns pensive as he considers their uncertain future. He worries about their absence and the inevitable confrontation with the company. As night falls, Kanuo rests on the sofa under the moonlight. The group eventually retreats to the bedroom for the night. Kanuo sleeps soundly, enjoying the proximity to his companions. Ling remains awake, his face lit by the glow of his phone. He checks missed messages to track the situation they left behind. Setting the phone aside, he remains troubled by unresolved questions. Lying in the dark, he weighs the secrets he's keeping from Jian. He instructs Kanuo to pretend everything is normal at the company tomorrow. Kanuo listens intently, his gaze sharp in the shadows. Ling resolves to keep searching for the truth within the company. He closes his eyes, hoping his memory holds against the risks. A sudden worry about fur on the bed breaks his serious mood. The city sun beats down on the quiet apartment complex. Kanuo steps through the door, arms full of heavy reference materials. He explains to his colleague that he's been away visiting his master. The coworker comments on the notoriously poor reception in the mountain region. Kanuo feigns innocence, claiming he simply kept his phone powered off. Outside the office, heavy boots come to a sudden, suspicious halt. Jian waits by the entrance, his expression unreadable and cold. A hand hesitates near the frame, sensing the tension with it. Kanuo settles on the floor, pretending to wait for the copier. He leans in, catching every word of the private conversation. Alai looks up from his desk, stunned by the unexpected visitor. Jian stands firm, ready to confront the professional matters at hand. Alai slides a document across the desk, demanding a signature. Jian accepts the folder, his mind drifting to hidden secrets. His gaze narrows as he reflects on his concealed beastman nature. He wonders why a formal contract was never established between them. Alai's eyes widen as the reality of the pheromone struggle hits. Jian's grip tightens on the paper, feeling the weight of the truth. He proposes a desperate plan to erase the lingering scent. Alai stares back, completely lost for words at the suggestion. He questions if their entire bond was built on this single utility. Jian offers a pained smile, noting the lack of mutual trust. Alai slams his hands down, his composure finally shattering. He demands to know why there is no hatred for the one responsible. Jian questions the connection between his condition and his past. Silence fills the room as Alai struggles with his own secrets. Jian points out the constant wall of silence between them. He laments that a year has passed without truly knowing each other. Jian turns away, admitting his failed attempt at genuine affection. He declares that he has finally reached his breaking point. Alai reaches out, but the distance between them is now a chasm. A trembling fist betrays the deep emotional agony being felt. Tears begin to cloud Jian's eyes as the past resurfaces. A memory flickers of a quiet afternoon spent in an empty classroom. He remembers the immense risk taken to hide his true identity. The grueling effort to appear human flashes through his mind. Alai's fierce gaze reflects a soul haunted by instinct and regret. Jian's hand trembles with a mix of fury and despair, his knuckles white as he grips his sleeve in a moment of pure emotional volatility. He looms over Alai, his voice sharp as he demands to know if this entire ordeal is just a cruel test of his patience. The tension is thick as Jian stands his ground, his posture rigid as he refuses to let the distance between them grow any further. He vents his frustration, feeling that his years of professional restraint have been misinterpreted as a total lack of initiative. Pain flashes across Jian's face, his features twisting as he struggles to grasp why they have drifted so far apart despite his efforts. Alai remains remains remarkably composed, staring back with a calm that suggests he is completely unfazed by the sudden loss of control. A gentle hand reaches out to offer comfort, representing a deep-seated trust built over their long history together. The harsh lines on Aegean's face finally soften as the realization of his own insecurities begins to sink in. Alai looks away, his expression clouded by the weight of a decision that has been weighing on him for far too long. He delivers a crushing blow, stating clearly that their partnership might have been a fundamental mistake from the very start. Aegean pulls Alai into a tight, desperate embrace, swearing that he doesn't regret a single moment of the time they spent together. He looks down with a gaze full of longing, realizing that his words might not be enough to mend what is broken. Alai's hands rest tentatively on Aegean's chest, the physical closeness highlighting the emotional gap that still remains between them. Hidden nearby, Kano watches the heavy scene unfold with a look of genuine concern for his friends. He retreats to a quiet corner with his supplies, understanding that this is a private conflict where he cannot intervene. Later in the busy cafeteria, the staff members can't help but gossip about why the director's office remains closed. They whisper about how drained and haggard the leadership looked during their brief appearance earlier that morning. Alai sits quietly at a lunch table, staring blankly at his tray while his mind remains miles away. Noticing his friend's lack of appetite, Kano carefully places a piece of shrimp on Alai's tray to encourage him. He continues to pile on more food, determined to ensure Alai maintains his strength despite the obvious stress. Kano reflects on how sharing a meal is the ultimate sign of loyalty and care in his world. He ignores his own lunch, focused entirely on finding something that might actually appeal to Alai's palate. Alai brushes his fingers against his neck, admitting that the current situation has completely killed his appetite. Kano leans in close, promising to take him to the market after work to find a meal he truly enjoys. Kano's enthusiasm for his friend's well-being radiates with an almost blinding, cheerful intensity. The peaceful moment is shattered when a new tray is abruptly set down on the table with a loud thud. Aegean stands there, looking every bit the professional while critiquing the lackluster quality of the company food. The surrounding employees stop their chatter, stunned by the sudden and unexpected appearance of the high-ranking executive. Without saying a word, Aegean begins the meticulous task of preparing the meal with focused precision. He bypasses Kano entirely, placing a perfectly prepared piece of food directly onto Alai's tray. Kano watches the interaction with a sour face, feeling his role as the primary caretaker being quickly usurped. Alai looks up in confusion, questioning why Aegean is going through so much trouble during a simple lunch. Aegean responds with a faint, determined smirk that hints at a complete change in his personal strategy. Resting his chin on his hand, he boldly declares his intent to pursue Alai properly and restart their relationship from the very beginning. Alai stares ahead with a weary but resolute expression, ready to draw a hard line in the sand. To Aegean's utter shock, Alai firmly declares that he is currently in a relationship with Kano. Refusing to back down, Aegean casually suggests that any relationship can be broken, just like their own past connection. Kano sinks into a spiral of self-doubt, wondering why someone as sophisticated as Alai would ever choose a knave, low-earning wolf like him. The weight of his perceived inferiority crushes him as he realizes he can't compete with Aegean's years of experience in human society. Trying to regain ground, Aegean reminds Alai of his old habits, offering to peel shrimp to cater to his preferences. With a smug, unfazed smile, Aegean insists that he simply wants to offer Alai a better alternative. He directs a cold gaze toward Kano, dismissing their short-lived bond as something that shouldn't cause pressure. Kano's heart sinks as he struggles with the agonizing thought of losing Alai to a more successful rival. Nearby staff members can't help but whisper, debating whether the boss is a persistent ex or an interloper. The tension finally snaps as Alai slams his hand onto the table to silence the escalating conflict. Standing tall, Alai makes it crystal clear that Aegean is nothing more than a friend and a professional superior. He abruptly ends the lunch, telling Kano it's time to head back to handle the mountains of work waiting for them. Kano's inner spirit howls with joy, celebrating this small victory as he trots happily behind his partner. Meanwhile, Aegean shoots a terrifying, demonic glare at the gossiping employees, instantly silencing their chatter. The duo leaves the cafeteria behind, the heavy atmosphere of the office finally beginning to lift. Kano remains lost in thought, his mind racing with the implications of the day's confrontation. Seeking a change of pace, they stop by the supermarket to browse through the selection of fresh meats. Alai turns to his companion, asking for technical advice on which cuts of meat Ling would prefer. Kano focuses intensely, tapping into his memories of their time spent together in the past. He recalls that back when they were working, his master always had a strong preference for beef. However, he notes that such luxuries were impossible to find during their long isolation in the mountains. Alai looks at the price tag, carefully calculating the cost of providing a proper meal. The two of them stand side by side, meticulously comparing the quality of the available packs in the cooler. Ever the budget-conscious shopper, Alai grabs several boxes to take advantage of the late-night discount. They navigate the aisles together, turning a simple chore into a moment of domestic cooperation. Alai is genuinely impressed when Kano lightning-fast calculates that the total matches exactly one day's wages. Alai reaches up to affectionately ruffle Kano's hair, asking if he also has a taste for alcohol. With a thumb up and a beaming smile, Kano enthusiastically claims that a good drink is the key to happiness. Eli's logical side kicks in, reminding him that biologically, animals and alcohol don't usually mix well. Despite the logic, Kano looks away pensively, suggesting they should buy some for the occasion anyway. They find themselves in the beverage aisle, where the high prices of the premium bottles give them pause. Kano looks at the labels, bitterly realizing that someone like a Jian wouldn't even blink at these costs. He grips the shopping cart with newfound determination, vowing to find a way to earn a massive fortune for their household. Eli recalls the time Kano used his puppy form to generate quick income through a typing live stream. Kano strokes his chin, questioning why Eli stopped him if that method was so incredibly lucrative. The moment of reflection is broken as Eli signals that it's finally their turn at the checkout counter. A brilliant, mischievous idea strikes Kano. If he brings his master into the live streaming business, they'll be rich in no time. Eli unpacks the groceries, carefully setting aside the premium meat and wine. The label reveals a high-quality vintage intended for their celebration. He places the bottle on the table as Ling watches with growing anticipation. Ling can't contain his excitement, dancing around the dining set. The husky rolls on the floor, overjoyed by the upcoming feast. Eli looks on with a soft smile, pleased by his friend's reaction. Ling hops onto a chair to get a better look at the spread. He beams at the bottle, mentally thanking Eli for the treat. Suddenly, his expression shifts to one of shock. Kano grabs the wine, pivoting the conversation toward their urgent need for cash. He checks his device, recalling how his last stream was a massive hit. Kano pitches a duo stream, promising they could double their earnings. Ling remains skeptical, eyeing his partner with a judgmental stare. Eli interrupts the plotting, serving up 2 massive heaps of food. He expertly pours the dark liquid into a serving bowl. Ling waits patiently as Eli prepares his specific portion. The husky digs into the meal while Kano watches with a grumbling stomach. Eli offers the second massive bowl to Kano with a kind gaze. Kano accepts the meal, his heart warmed by the gesture. He devours the food instantly, savoring every single bite. Eli tells him to relax, pouring more wine as they dine. He sets a glass down for Kano, completing the full table spread. Kano takes a long drink, enjoying the smooth flavor of the wine. The alcohol hits quickly, leaving his face flushed and warm. He stands up abruptly, announcing he's finished with the meal. Only a few scraps remain on the plates after the frantic eating. Eli wonders if the wine is just making Kano sleepy. Elsewhere, a mysterious small dog navigates a computer to create a new profile. Eli finishes the chores while Ling staggers nearby, feeling the effects of the drink. Outside, the night is quiet under the glow of a thin moon. Relaxing on his balcony, a man notices a strange notification on his phone. He stares at the screen in disbelief at what he's seeing. A viral live stream shows 2 dogs dancing together, leaving the viewer stunned. Rapid clicking echoes as furry paws fly across the mechanical keys. Kano barks commands into his headset, fully locked into a high-stakes match. Ling watches from the sidelines, mesmerized by his friend's intense focus. The 2 pups work in tandem, their juvenile forms barely reaching the desk. Victory flashes across the monitor as they secure the MVP title. Kano lets out a long, exhausted breath after the final play. A tiny, satisfied smirk appears on the wolf pup's face. Viewers shower the stream with digital gifts as Kano celebrates his level up. In the kitchen, Eli pauses, hearing suspicious noises coming from the bedroom. He approaches the door, puzzled by a strange scent wafting through the air. Inside, Ling bows low to show his absolute respect for the Lord Gamer. Eli throws the door open, catching the 2 gamers red-handed. He clenches his fist, furious at the total disaster they've made of the room. The frustrated caretaker marches toward the bed to demand answers. Eli stops in his tracks, blinking in pure confusion at the scene. He glances at the scattered tech, realizing just how many people are watching. He points an accusing finger, scolding them for ignoring his previous warnings. Eli stands firm, reminding them that live streaming is strictly forbidden. Ling hangs his head low, feeling the weight of their caretaker's disappointment. Eli warns that exposing their beastman nature online is a massive risk. Kano barks back defiantly, determined to make it as a pro streamer. A sudden, unexpected disturbance jolts everyone in the room. A firm grip suddenly latches onto the edge of the mattress. Eli feels a tug on his clothing as a mysterious figure reaches out. He looks down, eyes wide with shock at the man standing before him. Ling realizes the room's atmosphere is shifting due to a sudden biological heat cycle. Eli covers his face, trying to block out the overwhelming sense in the room. He hurriedly tosses a pile of clean laundry toward the bed to resolve the situation. Eli watches the transformation in disbelief, wondering how their master regained human form so quickly. 10 years ago, Harold was a striking 18-year-old model who dominated the industry with his intense and captivating gaze, living a life of pure luxury. He spent his earnings as fast as they came, lounging in the sun without a single care for the future. But the high life didn't last, and soon he found himself abandoned by the industry and facing severe financial hardship. In a moment of desperation, he reached out to the shadowy world of pet pharmaceuticals, seeking any way to regain his former glory. He began consuming illicit drugs specifically designed for beast folk, hoping for a physical edge that would restore his fame. His obsession led him to work for the pharmaceutical company directly to secure access to their most experimental and restricted substances. Harold was eventually invited to join internal trials, finally holding the vial of a new drug that promised to change everything. The experiment was a catastrophic failure, causing him to lose his human shape and regress permanently into a canine form. Unable to even speak, his cries were reduced to animalistic howls as his vocal cords completely degenerated, forced into exile. He survived on the fringes of society by foraging for food in the lonely, quiet mountains. During this isolation, he discovered a wounded wolf cub and decided to take the young creature under his protection. Under Harold's patient guidance, the wolf cub eventually learned the secrets of transformation, preparing for their eventual return to the world below. The pair finally journeyed back to civilization, a loyal wolf cub and his mysterious partner ready to face a new life. Back in the present, Kano questions why Harold has chosen to wear such sharp, formal business attire for their casual meeting. Harold simply shrugs off the question, finding the sophisticated lines of the suit far more comfortable than his animal skin. He swirls a glass of red wine with practiced elegance, maintaining the refined composure of the professional model he once was. He reminds the group that he was once famous for his thug-in-a-vest look, radiating a powerful and handsome energy that defined an era. Both Kano and Ling are completely starstruck, admiring the sheer charisma and elegance radiating from their master's human form. Kano's eyes sparkle with excitement as he suggests that Harold could make a fortune by bringing that professional image to a live stream. Harold finds the idea amusing, but the sudden laughter causes his unstable transformation to abruptly give way. In a flash of light, the sophisticated man vanishes, replaced once again by a confused and fluffy dog. Kano moves with lightning speed to cover him with a blanket, hiding the master's sudden regression from any prying eyes. Eli stands firm, expressing his deep disapproval of the group, using their animal forms to gain cheap attention online. The dog barks back in clear defiance, suggesting that if others are jealous of their success, they should simply try it themselves. Kano tries to reason with Eli, pointing out that the gifts from fans prove that their hard work is finally paying off. When asked why he is so desperate for more income, Kano falls into a heavy and somber silence. Eli watches him closely, noting that the usually loud and straightforward wolf is being uncharacteristically evasive about his goals, giving them one final warning to think carefully about their future. Eli turns his back and walks out of the room. Kano sits frozen on the couch, the weight of the difficult conversation visibly pressing down on his shoulders. He watches Eli's retreating figure, his heart heavy with the words he is still too afraid to say out loud. Deeply troubled by the rejection, Kano wonders how he can ever get Eli to understand his true motivations for streaming. The master offers a glass of wine as a silent comfort, suggesting that a drink might help clear the heavy tension in the room. Elsewhere, Boss Ling sits in his dark, high-rise office, brooding over his inability to win Eli's affection. He reflects on his constant efforts to maintain a perfect human form, yet Eli seems to show more warmth to simple animals. He questions the point of all his human sophistication if a beast folk's animal form is what truly captures Eli's heart. Suddenly, a notification pings on his smartphone, alerting him to a beast folk livestream that has just hit the trending charts. He picks up the device with a cold expression, his professional curiosity piqued by the sudden surge in online activity. On the screen, he sees Kano and Ling performing for their audience in their charming hybrid forms. His eyes widen in sudden shock as he recognizes the familiar faces currently taking the internet by storm.